Good.
All right. Call this meeting of CPDC to order. So will you do the honors
I
to
sure will. Happy
start us
to.
off?
So thank you all for joining us for the CPDC meeting of Monday, March 11th, 2024. I am Andrew McNichol, the Community Development Director. To my right is from staff is Senior Planner Mary Benedetto. And from the board tonight, we are all in person. We have Chair John Weston, Vice Chair Tony D'Arezzo, Mark Wetzel, and Hillary Mative. 2 members are absent tonight, but if you'll notice, this meeting is run in a hybrid fashion, both in person, both on Zoom. For the in-person attendees, we do ask there's a sign-in sheet in the corner. If you missed it, please sign in at the table. For those on Zoom, please remain muted until you have a public comment, question, or presentation, where we will then ask you to unmute and provide that opportunity. So in terms of public process, the board will stick to its normal procedure that an applicant will present their presentation to the board. The board will provide comment and question amongst themselves to the applicant, and then we'll open to public comment. Public comment for those in person, again, please raise your hand. And when acknowledged by the chair, please come to the podium for your public comment or question. For those on Zoom, please look to use the raise hand feature found under reactions, or if your camera is on, just wave your hand around. We'll look to capture you for the chair, get you unmuted, and then you can provide your comments. So for those all's awareness, for your first public comment or question, please state your name and address for the record so that we can capture such. And other than that, this meeting is being broadcasted and recorded by RCTV on all local channels and soon to be their YouTube. So I think we're good to roll.
All right. So the first item on our agenda is sign permit application for 533 Main Street, Lair Realty Partners. Is someone here or online?
Yes, on Zoom.
Evening, everyone. My name is Ed Batson with Batson Brother Signs, and I am for their exterior signage.
And I can bring the renderings up on screen if you want to describe the proposal.
Yep. So what we have here is we're proposing 2 identical exterior wall signs, individually mounted letters that are going to measure 9 inches high by 13 feet, 4 inches wide. The primary wall sign is going to be situated right above their main entrance, and then the secondary wall sign will be, on just the other corner of the building, centered over those windows right there. Both sets are to be non-illuminated, 1 inch thick Sintra letters. It's similar to acrylic. And then we are also proposing some window vinyl for their main entrance, which is their incorporates their logo as well, and not just the lettering. We feel as though that one's upside down. We were looking at the other signs in the area, and just to kind of match the general aesthetic of the neighboring businesses, and to keep costs down as well, the tenant decided to stick with a non-illuminated option. So happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Questions from the board?
No, actually, this is one of the better sign applications I've seen.
Yeah.
Straightforward.
Pretty
That's what we like to hear.
Pretty straightforward, yeah.
I actually have a question. According to 853, is this business B, correct? Is this business B?
Yes.
So it's saying that on that, it's saying there's a primary sign is equal to 2 square feet per linear foot, but it's saying the secondary sign area shall not exceed half of the sign area allowed for the primary sign. Is that something like,
Yeah, so because the business has frontage on 2 facades, they've met that criteria.
okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Yep, no, great question.
Deep in the sun.
And I think you can correct me, but I want to say this is just under 10 square feet for each of the signs.
Yes, I believe so, and if you bear with me for 1 second, it's 4 9 divided by 144, it actually comes to 10 square feet on the dot.
Just
I came at 9.9 when I did the math, but
yeah.
I like your number, okay, yeah, 9.9.
And other than that, I don't see a problem with anything.
Just for reference, the Chronicle residential signage is above the awning here to the right, which we had looked at a few years ago.
Yeah, that's an older image. Yeah, Chronicle I know is, we don't have anything to do with Chronicle, but I do know they have some lettering above their awning right now.
All right. Questions, comments from the public? No, online.
None seen.
All right. So we have a draft certificate of appropriateness.
Which I only have one question on. I think I know the answer, but not included is a blade sign, and so sorry, just to step back. The draft certificate summarizes exactly what we just heard: the 2 wall signs and their size, measurements, and area. In some past applications, we've conditioned a potential administrative approval for future blade signs should a business wish to do so. I didn't know if that would be appropriate here should they ever consider such, or would we want to double check the location, area, and design?
I would say we'd want to check the location design given the overhang for the Chronicle.
Yeah, makes sense. Other than that, happy to take any comments, questions, conditions.
Or a motion, if no one has any comments.
Motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness for Lair Realty Partners for 2 wall-mounted signs at 533 Main Street, according to their submitted proposals.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you guys. Thank you, Ed. We'll follow up in due time.
All right, appreciate your time. Have a good evening,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
And if I can jump
Sure,
in, I
please
would
do.
recommend sometimes best practice we've done on the board is we take the approval not required plans out of order under other business. We would be happy to do so again if you would like.
Sure. Do we first just, right, because we have one that is going to be continued.
Yeah, we
Right.
can do that first and get that out of the way.
So for 0 Harold Ave, definitive subdivision application, we received a request to continue to April, our April meeting.
They're still working through some of the needs on the back end to ensure they have the proper documentations and notes in place.
So motion to continue the definitive subdivision application for 0 Harold Ave to April 8th.
Second?
All those in favor? All right.
Great. Thank you.
All right, so yeah, let's take the, out of order, the definitive subdivision.
117 and 121 Prospect, is that the one?
Mhm.
Oh, I'm sorry, the A and R,
Yes, A&R approval.
sorry.
And I believe we have some. Yep.
How are you? I'm Steve Malashuk. I'm the land surveyor representing
the Murphys and the Gilligans, who they own a property in common ownership to the rear of their 2 existing homes. And their plan is to subdivide it in half and combine it with their individual properties, to form one contiguous property. So I know I've been speaking with Mary, and I submitted the plans to her and addressed some of the comments on the plans. So I think, I think I got everything to you needed. So if there's anything else she may need, I can answer any questions you may have.
Anything from planning or engineering to highlight?
There was no highlights, I guess, just for public awareness. So an approval not required plan is a form of subdivision in which there is no public hearing notice or public hearing scheduled, because these tracts of land exist within and have frontage that exist on right-of-ways, and so these tracts are typically handled administratively when they are processed and proposed. So just for example, these lots exist, they front Prospect Street, they share this lot in the rear, and they're dividing this lot and simply conveying their relevant halves to the relevant parcels. So there's no public hearing notice, no public hearing process, it's just a standard administrative process.
Questions from the board, comments?
So is Grant Street is a paper street,
Grant Street is a paper street.
but these 2 lots will be combined with those current lots, so they couldn't be accessed from Grant Street if it was developed.
Correct. At least as they stand today, they could not be. They're not individual building lots. They don't meet the minimum square foot areas or the minimum frontage of the zoning district. So, whether or not Grant Street were ever even to be built out, they're not buildable lots, and only one fronts Grant Street, at least as they're proposing it.
So it doesn't become part of their other lot, it's,
They could choose to combine it under common ownership, or they could choose not to.
And my only question is, what did the plot plan or the lot lines look like before the proposed division?
So presently, the property in the back, it's an existing, 12,000 square foot lot, as you mentioned, and the Murphys and the Gilligans both owned it. Prior to that, I think there was 4 or 5 other abutters that owned that property at one time. So there, that lot to the rear, it was 80 feet by 159. And now the Gilligans and the Murphys are the final 2 owners that own that together. So now they just, so the Gilligans live on the right there and the Murphys are on the left. So they want to split it in half, and the Gilligans are going to take the piece on the right and the Murphys are going to take the piece on the left.
Okay. That's the confusion. I
Yeah,
couldn't
so
figure out where it was
right now
originally.
it's just, it's just an assessors parcel that stands by itself. 80 by 159 feet.
It's a rectangle being divided into 2 squares.
Yeah, so it's a rectangle now, so
Okay.
two squares. Yeah, there it is right there.
Andrew, I always confuse these. Do we need a motion to accept it, or do we kind of just need to sign off on the paperwork?
It is a motion to endorse the approval not required plan.
I apologize, I'm jumping ahead, Mr. Chairman.
That's okay. Now, if you have a motion in mind, I'd be interested in hearing.
Motion to endorse the approval not required plan for 117 and 121 Prospect Street.
I'll second.
Further discussion?
do we need to read this certificate or?
You do not, no. So there's a memo that summarizes it, and then the certificate is what gets posted with the clerk and recorded.
As the decision.
Okay. Just making sure we didn't have to say it out loud.
All right, all those in favor? All right, 4-0.
Typically at the end of the night, we'll sign the Mylars and follow up this week, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, should I just swing by Mary's office to pick up the plan at some
Yep,
point?
exactly, yeah, we'll let you know tomorrow and
Right.
whatever time works for you, we'll have them available.
All right, thank you for your time.
And you do
Great.
have the Mylars here tonight?
Yeah, they're right,
Yes.
they're right
Okay.
here. Okay,
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
All right, moving on. So now we're gonna go to the public hearing for definitive subdivision at 246 Walnut Street. And is there a,
We have Jeff on Zoom.
There is a
there
legal
is a legal
note
notice?
to
Right.
read into the record.
Right.
So let's see. Share that on screen.
Notice of public hearing, notice is hereby given that pursuant to MGL Chapter 41, Section 81T, Reading Subdivision Regulations, Sections 3.0 and 6.0, the Community Planning and Development Commission, CPDC, will hold a public hearing on Monday, February 12th, 2024 at 7 p.m. in the Select Board Room at Town Hall, 16 Lowell Street, Reading, Mass., and through the remote and online measures below, to consider the application for a two-lot definitive subdivision submitted by Stella Construction for land located at 246 Walnut Street, Assessor's Map 3, Lot 19, in Reading, Massachusetts. A copy of the application and accompanying plans are available to the public at the town hall by appointment and on the town website the Thursday prior to the hearing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right,
Wow,
with that,
that guy needs to go on a radio or something. That was great.
he
That
does.
guy just hates paperwork.
Very good. I need to, before I introduce myself, can I share the screen at some point? So Mary or Andrew?
Yes.
My name is Jeffrey Brem. I represent the developers on this Stella Construction and property on Stella Construction. I am with the offices of Meisner Brem Corporation. We're engineers and land surveyors, celebrating our 31st year in business last week. We're pretty proud of that. I would like to present the project. You may recall that you saw the project. Let me see if I got the wrong thing up. I'm sorry. Just give me a second here to figure out which plan is you guys. There we go. You saw the project on July 10th as a preliminary plan. And let me just get set up here. At the time you issued a decision on that, and we, if you recall, we had some conservation issues to attend to. So let me bring you up to speed. So this is Walnut Street here. At the end of Walnut Street, there's a 2.02 acre piece of land with an existing house on it. The idea is to raise the house and divide the property up. Like I said, it was originally going to be 3 lots. If supporting the application, and you have it in front of you in your decision, Mary did a great job. We submitted a Form B, a Form G, list of abutters, a legal notice that was just read. We have a 13-sheet plan set. Was submitted with a cover letter explaining it, a waiver letter, an application narrative that we also combined with the required materials for Conservation Commission, and we revised that recently for the revision, so that's up to date. The stormwater management report in 2 volumes, and then we made some changes at the direction of the town over the last couple of months, and there are email chains on those changes. We have a pretty good record to this date. So let's go through what we've done. The existing conditions, it's a 50-foot wide right-of-way being proposed, 24-foot of pavement on this 2.02 acre lot. It's in the S20 zoning district. As I said before, this rear portion, and I'm going to zoom now up to a closer plan. I'm going to scroll through the plan set real quickly. This is the note sheet, specifications. Some of the required zoning information is here, abbreviation list, and so forth. This is the locus. This is the existing condition plan here, and all these dots are trees. So they've all been surveyed. As you know, we have to meet your tree standards. And then this kind of shows the wetland pretty good. So where my hand is right now is the edge of the bank of the river. And with that, associated with that is 2 setbacks, the inner riparian zone, which is the first 100 feet, and the outer riparian zone, which is the second 100 feet. That overlaps with the bordering vegetated wetland, which is this line, and that has, as you know, a 100-foot buffer zone associated with it. So we have all these overlapping zones. The inner riparian zone, we're not proposing any work, and work would not be allowed to be done unless it's water-dependent use, like a canoe ramp or something. So we are not proposing anything in the inner riparian zone. We are proposing some work in the outer riparian zone. And that's why, because it was such a sensitive site, you sent us to conservation. And conservation, we met with them with this plan here. I'm going to try and find this proof plan. It's in here somewhere. I think this is it. Yeah, this is the proof plan. So it's got all these trees on it as well. But this shows the 3 lots as we submitted before. And everything on this plan was extremely tight. And a lot of work on this second lot was in the outer riparian zone. So much so that it would have been difficult for us to meet the various performance standards. So in meeting with Andrew, Mary, and Chuck, we decided, of the staff, we decided to reduce this to only 2 lots and not try to squeeze in that 3rd lot. So ultimately, this is a 1-lot plan turning into a 2-lot plan. We don't have the frontage necessary, and we want to be buildable, so we can't be like the previous plan. So what we're proposing is a 2-lot plan extending Walnut Street, and this plan here kind of shows it probably the best. And I'll be using this. And let me just switch pages. Ultimately, we're proposing 3 lots, a 27,895 square foot lot, all of which is in upland, which has 137 feet of frontage. That's lot 1. Lot 2 is 20,058 square feet with 311 feet of frontage, almost all the cul-de-sac, all the way to here. And so we meet the zoning. And then we have parcel Z, and that's part of our discussion, which I'll get to when I talk about what conservation did. That's the 3rd unbuildable lot. We had previously requested and were granted a waiver from 60 feet to 50 feet, but we're re-requesting that waiver again. This is would extend Walnut Street dead end by extending this 260 feet. The total from the intersection, I think it's South Street, is 750 feet long. Our wetlands were flagged by Leah Basbanes in January 23. Conservation came out here, and between Chuck and the board and the commission, we made a bunch of changes to address them. Ultimately, we are closed the hearing and got an order of conditions. And it had 5 mitigation measures with that. The first is parcel Z, totaling 28,824 square feet, is to be donated free of charge to the town Conservation Commission. We're going to provide an easement where my hand is from the roadway to this parcel. Because it's public access, we're going to provide 2 parallel parking spaces at the beginning of the roadway here. We're not expecting a tremendous use, but Chuck said if somebody were to use it, we didn't want the parking on the cul-de-sac. And this section here, and it shows up a little bit clearer on another sheet, but I don't want to spend time going through it, is a Japanese knotweed area. And we're going to remove that under the auspices of the Conservation Commission and their rules to remove that invasive species. And with off-site and offset from these plans, the applicant has agreed to build a bridge over the stream, the same stream upstream at the park. Oh, geez, I just forgot the name of the park.
Sturgis.
Sturgis Park, thank you, Sturgis Park. And that will be at the expense of the applicant, and it'll be an enhancement of a park that's recently been worked on. I know you're in a quick agenda, so I'm going to go quickly as I can now. We have asked for a waiver for the traffic because we're only adding 1 more lot. We have a detailed tree outline of how we're cutting trees and replacing trees. Anyway, the net is we're cutting 20 trees and replacing 28 trees and bushes. We do have a retaining wall here, and I think Mary asked if there's to be a fence on it, and it should have a fence because it's over 4 feet high. We have one light pole being proposed. The utilities. So if you'll see, we are connecting to town water with a 2 individual 1-inch lines, and we're connecting with town sewer with 2 1.5-inch lines, force mains, with an E1 pump. That is typical and has been reviewed and accepted, that concept, by the DPW and the engineering. From drainage point of view, currently this whole thing just drains to the east to this wetland, obviously. We're going to pick that up in a series of catch basins, discharging to a underground infiltration system under the right of way. And then that gets discharged, and you'll see a comment later, to this overflow. It basically goes in the ground, but there is an overflow pipe that's right about here that has to move a little bit. And then so we're taking care of, and that drainage is designed for the 100-year storm all the way through. We show some snow storage. We're providing some potential rooftop solar for pre-wiring and so forth. Now, that's my presentation. Before I get to the waivers, we have asked for in the past some waivers, and we were granted some in the past. But staff said we have to re-ask for them because this is the definitive. So let me quickly go through them, and you have letters and your staff report on this. But we're, again, the waiver for the traffic study because it's just one additional lot. The 50-foot wide right-of-way width instead of 60. I believe you granted that before. The right-of-way proposed is steeper than 2%. Within the 64-foot distance from the intersection, we have a slightly more than that, and it's on the profile sheet, one of these sheets. I don't think engineering has a problem with that. It's just right here. The dead end waiver requiring a dead end longer than 500 feet. Again, that was granted before. Now the landscaped island, this is a requirement that you guys have. We don't really care, but we do understand that the town has a preference for paving the entire cul-de-sac, and we've agreed to do that. And in order to do that, we need to get that waiver, which requires a landscape island. Part of the whole program here is to minimize the cost because we went from 3 lots to 2 lots. So rather than granted curbing, we'd rather not. And part of that also is this is going to be a privately maintained road by the 2 homeowners and not to be maintained by the town of Reading. Same with the sidewalks, we're asking for a waiver of that. And the pipes, instead of reinforced concrete, that's an old regulation. We use HDPE regularly now, so we're asking for a waiver for that. That, I believe, is my presentation. This is a plan that shows a little bit more detail for conservation. The approved plan, these are the details, the E1 pump details, and so forth. So everything is on here. We did get a letter from engineering, and let me just address that before you ask me about it, if you don't mind. So they have 7 or 8 comments, and I'll go through them. First of all, it makes a statement that a stormwater was based on the NOAA Atlas rainfall data. This is coming up in the future. In the short term, we did do that. We contained the 2-year storm, and the 10, 25, and 100 conditions were reduced by half. This is a statement from the engineer, meets the 85% TSS removal. He wanted to know what happened with the phosphorus. So we will be submitting a report to him for the phosphorus, but we're at 98%. So in our revisions, we will show him that. The grade of the road goes from 1% to 8%, and he's worried about truck, especially fire truck bottoming out. We do have a curve here for that, a vertical curve, so we do not expect it to be an issue. But I'll go over that with the engineer and make sure that that doesn't bottom out. It is true that the electric and water lines look like they're in the same trench. We will widen that up a little bit. Some minor little comment to show that it's just graphically to show that they're in separate trenches. He recommends putting in a new catch basin where my hand is. We disagree with that. Whether we win or lose, we'll either put the catch basin there or convince the engineering department that one's not needed. But we will take care of the comment. The same thing with this direction of the flow. He wants to make sure that no flow is going to flood the state highway. And we're going to add a couple of spot grades right here. and show to him that everything's going to the east and not to the state highway layout. The parking and access, he wants some kind of, way, if it's private, how do we make sure that the town and the townspeople have the right to go on this property, park the vehicles and walk across the right of way? That'll be done through a blanket easement as part of the covenant. And we agree to that. And lastly, there's a flared end section right here. I think I told you that, coming out, and it's right where the path is. One came before the other, and we just didn't move that. So we have to slightly move that end section. The retaining wall is within 5 feet of the property line, and he wants to know if we have permission from the property owner. We do not, but we could easily build, we don't have special permission, but we could easily build a wall within using blocks. We have 5 feet, and that's more than enough to build a wall. And his last comment, we checked with him today, it's a duplicate to the comments just before that about the flared end section. So the comments from engineering, pretty minor. And with that, I'll finish up and turn it back to you to see if any questions. I did pretty good. I tried to do that in 15 minutes.
Thank you. Before we get into comments, I want to ask Andrew and Mary about process. So where do we stand, right? Like right. It's agreed that they still have some plan changes to make, right? Some things to address from engineering. I think this board would completely agree with that. So, right, we're not in a position, I don't think that we're gonna be approving tonight. If we do and if we don't, sort of where do we stand and what else do we need to do, right? We need to approve waivers. I always get mixed up on definitive subdivision, right? Primary,
Right.
first and second.
Yep.
Primary
So
and final. And
Jeff had made reference to the preliminary plan that was reviewed and approved in July of 2023. Preliminary plans are non-binding in nature. They really just kind of act as a guidance factor in terms of the development design. So that's what Jeff has been working on in the back end, kind of getting that extra level of detail into this design. So I believe they had submitted the application a bit earlier, but we had continued the opening of this hearing so that they could further vet through conservation, which Jeff is substantially complete with. I don't know if you've gotten a vote yet. I should have double checked on that, Jeff, but I don't believe so.
Yes, we did.
You
We
did?
did get a vote.
Okay.
Yep.
So they're fully
We
done
haven't
with.
seen the actual order yet, but we have the vote.
Gotcha. Yep, makes sense. So they've gone through the conservation process. However, their jurisdiction and control are a bit different than yours. So CPDC is here to kind of vet the overall site design, that right-of-way design, and those waivers you mentioned. Given that this is the first hearing and some of the engineering comments and some cleanup, yeah, we would probably recommend that some of that be done in advance of any vote, just to make sure, especially as it relates to the drainage design that is of pretty high importance in this property in the wetlands, that we get those at a comfortable design to move forward towards permitting and further level of detail through that process. So all in all, we're here in the definitive process, and this would be the last step prior to permitting, should it be approved. But virtually you have to approve the waivers and the proposal as a whole at a future date, likely. Not
Right.
tonight.
so I guess, right, and what I'd like to do, I think, right, it would be helpful, right, to go through the old and the new waivers to get it, for the applicant to have a sense of what this board is feeling, right, without necessarily voting on those, right, and then providing any other comments that sort of won't already be addressed by, them addressing the engineering comments. I think maybe we'll start with the second item first, of comments, not necessarily the waivers, but other comments on the plans that engineering didn't already catch.
Okay.
Anyone?
All right, I'll go first. On the notice of intent, page 5, the last 3 paragraphs. Specifically, the third from the last. There's a reference to a limit of alteration up to 5,000 square feet or 10% of the riverfront area within the lot, whichever is greater. Your next paragraph says this is an important takeaway. The developer first compute the total riverfront area on this subject lot. Show the work proposed is within 10% of that total lot riverfront area. My problem is that you had a parentheses at the end of that first paragraph I referenced that says on a lot recorded on or before October 6, 1997, such as the subject lot. The problem is if we grant the subdivision, those lots are now new lots and recorded after 1997. So how does this impact your proposal?
All right, good question. So I don't have all those data in front of me, but we have to, it's under 10.58, and this is the next number, I don't remember, I think it's 4-C, that we have certain requirements to do for Conservation Commission. They went through this in excruciating detail, and they concurred that we do. As far as the dates, the date has to do with you don't have to meet those standards if you're basically a lot before the regulations got formed, and that was in 97. So if you had a lot of record in 97 and weren't doing anything to it, you didn't have to follow the regulations. If your lot was created after 1997, which these 2 lots will be created, then any other work you'll do, you'll have to comply with those regulations. So yes, we do comply. That was in very big detail. We comply mainly because we have to be under 10%, which was just barely under 10%, and we're providing mitigation at a ratio greater than 2 to 1 per square foot of work that we're doing. That main mitigation is parcel Z. We're also doing those other 4 things that I said, in addition to the minimum mitigation that we have to do. And so the mitigation standards is the difference, really, between 10.584C and 10.585. And we're under 10.584C.
So when you reference the subject lot, you're referring to one of the 2 new lots, not both new lots?
No, I have to pull them out. There is basically an exemption that we're not covering. Help me find where you're talking, and then I'll be able to.
Page 5.
Page 5. I'm on 7 now.
All right, those last 3 paragraphs.
Right here.
So that first paragraph ends with on a lot recorded on or before October 6, 1997. That sounds like you're allowed to build within this area as long as the lot existed beforehand.
Correct.
However,
But we still have to be 10%, and we still have to have the mitigation.
okay, so the rules are that you don't have to meet the 10% or have the mitigation if the lot existed before 97.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's correct. We do have to have the 10%, and we do have to have mitigation because these are being created after 97.
okay.
So yeah, it's a backward. You're exactly right. It's kind of backwards. Yes.
All right.
Basically, October 6, 1997 is when the Riverfront Act went into play. So anything that was created before then was grandfathered because it would be unfair. And anything created after then has to follow the rules. So if the previous owner did something and didn't subdivide his land, he would be exempt for certain things. But we're not in that exemption.
Okay, so you're saying that you've got the requirement of a minimum of only 10% within the area.
Correct. So we have 71,006 square feet of area within the riverfront, which is less than the area of the whole lot, which is 80-something thousand. So of the 71,000, 10% of that is 7,100.
And you
That's
just did it
maximum we
again.
can-
The new lot is not 80,000 square feet.
No, but it's on the lot of record, correct.
I think you're gonna have to ask town council to look into this.
The property is getting developed. It's just the way it's written. The property is getting developed. We are not exempted. I shouldn't have said such as the subject lot because it's confusing. The lot is exempt right now. It is not exempt if you're dividing it up.
So you're asking, Tony, maybe just to make sure I'm clear, is the max 10% met on each individual lot, that threshold is not?
Yes,
Okay.
because
Yeah, that's not
if
how
you're
it's
calculating on
written.
80,000, it's different than calculating on 20.
Okay.
Understood. But that's not how it's written. This is a summary of many pages of information. And it's my summary, and I probably didn't write it very well.
That's fine. That was the
That's
biggest
what
question I
get
had.
That was what I get for trying to be concise.
I don't really have
And
much.
I will tell you that conservation scrutinized it. We went to several meetings, and I was originally under 10.584 redevelopment, and they moved me off to 10.585, which meant I needed to double my mitigation, and I agree with them.
Okay,
And the riverfront's very confusing.
well, I can agree, it's very confusing.
And that is conservation's jurisdiction,
Yeah.
of course, in CPDC's, but happy to try to look into that a bit further.
I had a couple of mine are more technical. I noticed on the plan you had a test pit, I think it said test pit 101, or it might be test pit 10. I couldn't really tell what the number was. And I didn't see that in the stormwater report, the test pit log. It may be there, but,
Oh, it's in there.
and what did it show?
Sand and gravel down over 8 feet, because I
Okay.
was the one that did it.
Because I think the soil type on the maps is, it said Swansea muck, which
Right. 'cause
probably
it-
not a sand and
Swansea's a
gravel.
muck. Swansea's a muck and it incorporates everything, but the actual site, it's where we're doing it is sand and
Sand
gravel,
and
beautiful
gravel.
material.
And where was groundwater?
Over 8 or 9 feet, we dug the total test pit, we never hit groundwater.
'Cause I think you're
Not
only,
even estimated seasonal high,
the bottom of the Caltech is about 48 inches.
yeah. The groundwater is gonna be the water level at the bank,
Yeah.
which is more than 8 feet below.
And I don't know whether you discussed this with engineering, and I'm a old engineer. You have 2 1-inch services going into the separate properties. Why don't they have like 1 2-inch and then tee off at the cul-de-sac?
You know, that, Mr. Chairman, is a good question. I wasn't involved with the details, whether it's a 2-inch or 2 1-inch. I'm gonna assume that the 1-inch is so that each individual property owner can maintain their own line. But yeah, it could be done either way. I've
Just
seen it done either way.
From my point of view, that's how I would have done it. And then also, I think on the grinder pump force main, I think you need a clean out or 2 where they come together.
Yeah, that actually gets designed by Environment One. They'll do
Yeah.
a final design on that. So you may be right. There'll be some kind of a terminal manhole there, maybe. But they do the design of that once we get approval.
All right, that's all I had.
I'll let you go first.
All right, I don't have, I'm just focusing in on the waivers at the moment. I don't have any specific technical detail, questions here, so.
I don't
We-
have
okay,
anything to add
okay.
at the moment. I mean, looking at the lot 2, it's a very tight building envelope available, just something to think about. It's very restrictive.
It's very tight. The developer sent me architectural plans, which I sent back and said it doesn't fit. So you have to design a custom home on this.
Okay, that's what I was kind of wondering if we would have to be looking at, if it would be coming before some sort of zoning or something because it's so tight.
No, we're not intending to go zoning, but they're gonna have to build it the way we showed it. Or less. They sent me one for lot 1 and it worked, So they were happy with that, but lot 2 didn't work.
All right.
That's why you could tell there's more jogs on lot 2's plan, because it's a specific plan.
On
And lot 1 is more, it's more of an envelope.
So let's go to the waivers. I have them somewhere here. Which,
10 of 11 on the narrative.
thank you.
Page 4 of the decision has
The
them.
decision would probably be better, right?
Yes, that would be better. All right, starting up the top, the traffic study, right, that's something.
Excuse me,
that
do we want to take any comments from the
Let's-
public before the waivers?
We're gonna go through these
Okay.
first and then open it up, because I think that we might have a, we'll see, right, so. Traffic study, I think that, right, we had this discussion before on this, adding 2 houses. Not generating a whole lot of traffic there. And, right, I know we also had the discussion on 60 versus 50 feet, which is what we have done in the past of conforming it to whatever it's feeding into. I'm not sure we need to have a further discussion on that, but willing to if anyone wants to.
Nope.
All right. The street grades, so, right, the request is for a maximum of, well, the waiver request is to exceed the maximum of 2% for a distance of at least 64 feet from the beginning of the intersection. I guess the fact that, right, there's a couple of things, in my mind, there's a couple of things that play together here. One is how that plays with the drainage in the stormwater, and also the question that that the town engineer had about the grade of the 8% grade in the transitions.
I can address those, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Okay, so here's the profile, the screen is
Yep.
showing you the profile. So let's take the second one first, the 8% grade, here's it's 8% for a point. It's less than 8% here because it's
Yep.
a vertical curve, and it's less than 8% here. And you see we have a wide sweeping curve before we get over to the 1%. So you're saying you got an 8% minus and a positive 1%, a change of grade of 9%, but it happens over 100 feet. So we don't think there's going to be a bottoming out. We feel confident we could prove it to that. If they came together like this, like the tangents down here, then it would bottom out, but we have the curve installed. As far as the 2% for 64 feet, we're proposing 4%, which, a lot of cross slopes on roadways are 2 to 3%. So this is still going to be considered flat, but it starts us out a lot better coming down 4% than coming over at 2%, which starts, the whole thing rises up even further. And we're able to be right close to grade right here because of that. So it's only going from 2% to 4% for that 60 feet. And we don't think it's bottoming out. And the 8% only happens for the instant that it's at this one point, because we have the biggest curve we could put in there.
Still think that's going to be dependent upon what the fire department determines and the town engineer.
Yeah.
And I would prefer, if we're going to grant a waiver, we grant a waiver with a specific number as opposed to, anything other than 2%.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, 4% shown. That's a good point.
Yeah, so, I think what you're hearing, and I agree with this as well, is sort of where I was going. I'm not sure what I make of this until we get we're more comfortable with the other grades along the roadway.
Okay. You want to punt that one until after engineering?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Requiring a typical cross-section for a 60-foot street, proposes a 50-foot right-of-way and a 20-foot paved travel way where 30 feet is required.
That's shown here. And basically, this is your town cross-section with those only those things changed, those dimensions. Everything else is built to the town specs.
Oh, so it's not a waiver of providing a cross-section, it's a cross-section with the number,
Correct.
30 feet, okay.
Right.
How does this impact with the 2 parking spaces that you're proposing on the side?
All right, let's scroll up. That makes it right there. So that's how they fit. This is shown as a 20-foot right now. So 2 parallel spaces fit well next to the trees that we have.
So they'll pull out, they'll go through the cul-de-sac to turn around, is the
Yeah.
proposal.
And the cul-de-sac is a full 45 foot, which is a requirement of the fire department for full turnaround without backing up. This is your big cul-de-sac.
All right, so when there is a car parked, how wide is the road at that point?
20 feet.
Okay, so it's the full 20 feet, and you're going out,
Yeah.
out 30 feet for the parking, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
The other waiver that maybe goes with that cross section is the curbing. That might potentially aid in the parking design, but I know typically in like the grade or in the grading and drainage design, we've in the past asked for vertical granite curbing to help control that, especially with the grades of this nature being in excess of the minimums. So Jeff, I didn't know if you had thoughts or the board had thoughts on that.
Yeah, we are showing curbing. It's just the Cape Cod berm style curbing, which allows the plow to roll up on it. And the biggest 2 reasons for that. One is because of cost. The granite curbing is expensive and not really the best sustainability because it costs so much to cut the curb. And we should be using used curbs. And then also because it's a private road, so the maintenance is going to be on the homeowners and not the town.
But who's plowing?
The homeowners.
So this, right, without putting words in anyone else's mouth, what this board is typically, the position this board has typically taken is that if the roadway edge is part of the stormwater system, meaning that the roadway is going to retain the stormwater on the road and direct it towards your catch basin, then it needs to be a vertical granite curb. The issue that we see all the time is that, and I think that's why Tony asked the question, is that especially a Cape Cod berm style curb lasts all of 10 years maybe max, and then and then you have a whole drainage issue, and so the for us, especially when it's for us, the vertical granite curb goes along with the stormwater when it's on private property and it's not going to be a town road like this. Even parking lots, we've taken the same position. So
I believe
Now, the only part that's part of the drainage system is this right here. Once you get to this catch basin 5, all the flow is directed this way. So it's all basically going away from, this is the high side and nothing goes to that right there. So it's just from catch basin 5 over this section right here.
does.
As far as
I-
required for the storm drain.
Yeah, I don't have a big issue with the Cape Cod berm in this instance, especially where we're reducing the pavement from 24 to 20. It gives, it's basically a shared driveway, but you're gonna get delivery trucks and things like that that might make it so that vehicles need to go up onto the curb. So with a vertical granite curb, it's a little trickier to do that. If this was a, 6-house subdivision, I wouldn't go along with Cape Cod berm, but in this instance, and if you're concerned about the durability of it, sloped granite is another option.
Essentially, this is, you said it's really like a common driveway, but the town fire department wants a full-blown cul-de-sac. So it's like a common driveway with a full-blown lollipop at the end.
I know when the town just paved my road, they put a regular asphalt berm in, or asphalt curb in.
Well,
Not a granite.
yeah, that's a change in policy.
But
Well, you said my road, I developed a subdivision on my own property and I put Cape Cod berm. So I guess I'm an advocate of it too.
yeah, I would prefer if it was, like I said, if it was a longer subdivision with driveways and sidewalks, from a public safety point of view and a drainage point of view, I think it's important, but in this case, I think, as Jeff said, really just that south side is, the area that's affecting the drainage.
I still personally, I maintain that right on that south side, granite curb, in the sloped, right? I've seen that, it doesn't stand up all that great. Because people do ride over it, and then suddenly you have you have blocks all over the place, sort of. If people do end up using that to drive up over. But on the rest, I'm fine with whatever.
I would say, as a minimum, also and I don't know if it's on the town detail, the catch basin should have a vertical granite curb backing.
Yeah, it's in the detail, I think, the D-stone.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
So now that we've had that discussion, right, sort of as I think Andrew said, right, linked is the 20-foot wide discussion. Personal, right, I'm going to say typically I would say no, 24 feet is really what you should have because of parking, but with the 2 parking spots right there, and it's short, to me 20 feet is fine in this situation.
That is a
I don't
good note, though. We should probably at least minimum consider no parking signage, which would have to be through the private way, but on that similar south side to ensure
Oh,
there's no
yeah.
impeding impediment.
Well, we're planting trees pretty darn close together over there, Andrew, so.
Right, but like if someone parks
we
in the
are-
right of way
yeah.
down that throat.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Take a look at that.
I don't have an issue with 20 foot. I think reducing the amount of pavement is, one of the goals we
Yeah.
need to have for stormwater management and sustainability.
All right. A waiver from section 7.1.5 requiring dead-end streets to be no longer than 500 feet. Applicant proposes an extension of Walnut Street by some number of feet, bringing the dead end of Walnut Street to a total of an estimated whatever additional length than what it is, which is more than 500 feet.
Did we vote on that for the preliminary? I thought we did.
You had
Talked about it.
I think we talked about it. I'm did we vote on that?
Yes, if you look on the screen now, these are the two that you
Okay.
voted on.
All right.
That was one of them, yes.
Yeah, so the extension is about 260 linear feet, bringing the total dead end to 750 feet. So it's plus 50%, close to 500 plus 250.
And
But-
the rest of it is a 45-foot paved cul-de-sac is provided.
Right.
And so we get the turnaround.
Yeah.
45-foot radius.
Any,
I just assume that's gonna require a hydrant somewhere along that stretch.
No, actually, the extension is just the two 1-inch lines. There's a hydrant, I believe, at the end of the cul-de-sac right now.
Okay. That was my point, that somewhere along there's gonna be a hydrant.
Yeah, there is one now.
and then there's a landscape cul-de-sac island, which is more our request. Sidewalks along the roadway, did we talk about that before? But it doesn't seem like the appropriate thing here. But stop me if I'm going too fast. And pipes and culverts of reinforced concrete. I have no opinion on that. I would look for for others.
Not many people putting in reinforced concrete pipe anymore.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, right, I think you've heard our comments. I want to open it up now to the public, either in person or online.
Not seeing any online.
All right, and not in person here, so. I think you've got some, right, our comments, some comments from town engineer. So some changes, I don't think significant, but some changes and refinements to the plans.
That's not a problem. The problem is gonna be what day you're gonna pick for me to come back, because I have a daughter that's getting married soon, so hopefully you pick a good day. It's my third daughter in 6 months getting married.
Wow.
Yeah, no kidding.
I would
So-
say congratulations, I think.
Yeah, you wouldn't say that if you saw my bank account. So what's next? We have these, we're on top of this, we could get these right back to the engineer, and they've been great in responding, so I don't think our side is gonna be an issue. It's bigger, I'm leaving in the middle of April, so hopefully you could do this before then.
The
When's your
meeting
next
is
meeting?
scheduled for Monday, April 8th. We would expect the plans done by the end of this month, if that all works out.
Yep, that works for me, I'm leaving on the 16th, so.
Right.
Motion to continue the subdivision hearing for 246 Walnut Street to April 8th.
Second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Great.
All right, 4-0.
Good comments, thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and we'll see you on April 8th.
All right,
I think I'll come to that hearing possibly in person.
all right.
Nice.
And you'll be able to see my face, flap me around a little bit in front of you. Very good, we'll see you then.
All right,
Thanks,
see ya.
Jeff, we'll be in touch.
Bye-bye.
All right. Moving right along. Next item on our agenda is continued public hearing for 0 Annette Lane.
Attorney Galvin is gonna kick it off for us.
All right. I think,
Someone has to unmute.
yeah, I think he needs to be unmuted.
Okay.
Oh.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everybody. Attorney Robert Galvin. I represent Peter Siebel, who's the applicant, and with me in person, well, with you in person is Andrew Pandolf from Vineyard Engineering. He's standing at the podium now. I thought maybe I'd give you a very brief recap of where we're at. I apologize for not being there in person, but I'm actually not feeling well, and thought it would be a better idea to stay here and make the presentation rather than bring whoever I have up there.
We like that.
Thank you.
So we're here tonight for a definitive subdivision approval for a one-lot subdivision known as Zero Net Lane in Reading. That's assessors parcel 38-139, and Mr. Pandolf will probably point to some of the things that I'm talking about as we are speaking. This is a property that we own. Mr. Siebel purchased it back in September of 1999 in the hope that it would be developed. The CPDC will probably remember last year we were in front of you on a preliminary subdivision approval, which was granted on April 10th, 2023. We received a 5-0 vote subject to conditions for the proposed preliminary subdivision. We had there's a second parcel, which basically is a non-buildable parcel that forms the layout of a net lane, an extension of a net lane. And that lane is actually laid out 50 feet wide because it's an older road. I know they lay them out 60 feet now, but this road, when it was laid out 50 feet wide, was laid out to that dimension. It's a public way constructed to a width of 30 feet before it basically reaches the edge of my client's property. Our original proposal was to extend that lane to provide frontage. However, only to construct a portion of that lane, approximately 30 feet of it, into my client's property beyond the existing layout to create room for a driveway of approximately 100 to 125 feet, which was specifically designed to accommodate fire and emergency equipment. We submitted a proof of a concept plan showing that we could construct the roadway by constructing a bridge over the wetland resource area between the 25-foot buffer zone limits. The commission granted us the necessary waivers to construct that proposed roadway extension. And the waivers that were granted were basically supported by a letter from me and Mr. Pandolf relating to the full profile of the roadway, a full traffic study, the completion of an environmental impact study, because we were going to be going in front of the commission, Conservation Commission, a full right-of-way width of 60 feet because on that lane, when it was originally laid out, was only laid out to a width of 50. The installation of granite monuments, a turning circle, because what we were proposing to do was only construct a driveway off of the nub that was originally in existence. We asked for the waiver of 2 sidewalks, street trees, and elements of the construction of the way. There were 12 enumerated conditions, all of which helped us form what we were going to apply for in our definitive subdivision approval, which we filed earlier in 2023. The subdivision approval was deferred until after the Conservation Commission acted on our notice of intent and actually issued an order of conditions. That was voted on and approved on February 14th, and the order of conditions is dated and was issued on the 26th of February. The appeal period to the state is now expired. On February 14th, basically the commission voted to issue an order of conditions approving our proposed single-family house project with some of their own conditions. And I'm going to kind of just summarize them in the manner that they're a little bit different from the original preliminary subdivision. We proposed an elevated boardwalk within the buffer zone and the bordering vegetated wetland. There were some different dimension changes. The commission wanted us to connect the proposed boardwalk to further out towards Applegate Lane, and it left up to us and a field determination where the end of the boardwalk would be closest to the existing layout of Annette Lane. Portion of the driveway, they asked for a retaining wall, and they approved a retaining wall within 35 feet of the bordering vegetative wetland, which is within this no structure setback. A very small portion of the driveway is in that same setback, and we basically had an extensive narrative from Lucas Environmental that supported our request for the variances that we needed. So now with the order of conditions in place, we're back to you seeking this one lot subdivision approval. And as Andrew's pointing out to you on the plan, this is a single family house lot that will comply with the lot area and frontage requirements. It has 43,740 square feet, 186.06 feet of frontage on the proposed extension of Annette Lane. We've eliminated the 30-foot extension of from the original layout, constructed layout of Annette Lane, because the Conservation Commission prefers us to remain away, and they've asked us actually to connect our driveway basically to the end of the existing Annette Lane. Again, the driveway is still the same 19 feet wide that we originally showed the Cpdc. It has an overhead clearance of at least 13 feet 6 inches and is built with the specific construction to withstand 64,000 pounds of load, which is what the fire department would require. We've installed a 42-inch post and rail fence along the edge of the driveway, which is something that the Conservation Commission wanted us to install so that snow storage would not seep into the wetland resource buffer zone. All of the runoff that we originally proposed is still captured by our stormwater management plan. As a matter of fact, all we've done is really reduced the impervious surface by not constructing that 30-foot segment of Annette Lane into the property. As I indicated before, the western portion of the boardwalk was extended to the existing pavement at Applegate Lane, and the easterly edge it ends basically at the edge of the 25-foot buffer, but the edge of that boardwalk will be determined by a field location between my client and the inspector for the Conservation Commission, provided there's an approval from the Cpdc. And we'll be granting an easement to the public and to the town of Reading, allowing the full use of Annette Lane extension, including the boardwalk. That's something that obviously we proposed initially and we're continuing to propose. In addition, we've, at the request of the Conservation Commission, we've been able to revise down the amount of site disturbance and diminish the number of trees that we anticipated we would have to take down, which we had to show the Conservation Commission, from 32 to 26 trees. And in addition, we proposed a donation to the Reading Conservation Fund, and ultimately the final number of trees that will be replanted will be decided in the field between the commission and my client at the time of construction. So tonight, Andrew's going to be able to answer any technical questions you have about the plan, but we believe we now have a plan that is consistent with the original preliminary subdivision approval, except as modified at the request of the Conservation Commission. It's a plan that shows a lot that will comply with the Reading zoning bylaw. We believe that the land can be used without danger to health and is suitable for the construction of a single-family home. We certainly have the authority to perform all the work and grant all the necessary easements to the town with the conservation approvals in place. We believe that the application is complete and was so certified by Mr. McNichols. We believe that the Board of Health and Fire Department are satisfied with this particular project. Mr. Pandolf will show you where we actually proposed to relocate a hydrant in order to make sure that we had appropriate fire service to the proposed house. This property is going to connect to municipal water and sewer, so there won't be any damage to the groundwater or any type of pollution. And we basically asked, with only a slight modification to one of the waivers, it's not a different waiver, but the same waivers. And we believe that these waivers serve the public interest and convenience. The construction of the boardwalk connecting these two neighborhoods and providing an easement, we think is a significant public benefit. We think that the plan, actually even more so than originally, protects and is respectful of the rights of the other abutting property owners. We think that it thoughtfully protects the open spaces and natural resources by maintaining in most respects and most material respects the buffer zones. There's only slight encroachment into the buffer zones, and there's clearly an off-site mitigation with the donation we'll be making to the commission. So that's in general our presentation. Andrew, if you'd like to highlight anything else on the proposed definitive subdivision plan, probably good time to do it now.
Sure. Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway, Andrew Pandolph with Vineyard Engineering. I think the biggest takeaway is that we eliminated that 30-foot right-of-way extension, and now we're simply connecting our driveway to the existing pavement of Annette Lane. And I think it's just worth repeating that as we show in our plan, the boardwalk does terminate at the 25-foot buffer zone limit. There was a lot of back and forth with the Conservation Commission about how to best connect to either the pavement of Annette Lane or the southern sidewalk, and that decision is going to be made in the field with their input. But it won't be anything constructed. It will likely be some form of a path. But we just couldn't come to an agreement on what those details would look like.
Andrew, could you just touch on the stormwater issues so that
Sure. Yep.
some of the abutters had mentioned they were concerned about off-site flooding?
Sure. So we did a full stormwater management report and design by Somerville Engineering. We're capturing 100% of the stormwater that we're creating. The surface runoff from the house will be captured via roof leaders to a infiltration chamber located to the west of the house. We're also going to be capturing any runoff from the driveway via catch basin, sort of towards the bottom of the driveway into another infiltration gallery. And then in addition to that, that dark bold line that goes around pretty much the entire work area is a gravel trench drain that will capture runoff, and it's going to compensate for the conversion of woods to grass around the house and sort of developed area. So anything that's not captured by the house or the catch basin in the driveway will be captured via that gravel trench drain that runs the perimeter of the development. And engineering reviewed our stormwater design and returned it with no comment.
Just so that I have it clear, so the idea there, because I don't think I've seen that before, right? At least in a residential context, right? So everything is closer to the house from where that gravel trench drain would be probably sod, lawn.
Yeah. So if you see, you can kind of. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then outside of that would remain wooded natural.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, we kind of show the limit of woods in that kind of that curly line around the house there. Yeah, so very small lawn around the house itself. And then the utilities will run underneath the driveway, connect to the existing municipal utilities that run through that wetland area to the south. The hydrant, currently there's a hydrant right where we're proposing our driveway. We're going to relocate that to the opposite side of Annette Lane, so there will be hydrant access. And I think the other important takeaway is, although we've eliminated that 30-foot wide right-of-way extension, the driveway can still accommodate a ladder truck.
Questions from the board?
Did the DPW weigh in on this proposal?
We had a DRT meeting early on in the project, and their only requirement was 19-foot wide driveway, 13'6" of vertical clearance and accommodate 64,000 pounds. So I don't know if they've reviewed it since, but in conjunction with Somerville Engineering, we made sure that the fire truck could make that swing.
I didn't say the fire department, I said DPW.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My problem is, I don't see how you plow in that lane.
Sure. So initially, we had snow storage proposed at the end of a net lane, because right now it just gets plowed to the end, right? So we
Right.
were extending to 30 feet, and we were going to have a snow storage area there.
But now you've got a
but
fence to
Sure,
prevent
at the
that.
request of the Conservation Commission.
So obviously, they've got to plow to the end of a net lane, which they do not have to do today.
Well, I mean, there's a house on the south side that's got a driveway not too far away. Yep, right, sort of to the right of.
Well,
Andrew's
120
cursor.
feet away, if not longer.
Sure, but I mean, I don't think they're stopping at the guy's driveway. It's paved, I gotta imagine they would pave as close to the end of the existing paved right of way as possible.
But even here, if you imagine them going all the way to the end of a net lane, which, yeah, okay, fine, but they're just piling up all the snow basically at the end of your driveway.
Sure.
And this isn't like a normal one where you're just getting the edge. This is all the snow ending there.
Sure, yeah, that was an issue that we, had, but that was conservation's request. They don't want any snow storage near the wetland. So, the homeowner may have to take on some snow removal themselves, I mean, there is some areas that they could store it on the edges of the driveways in terms of our driveway, but they could push it to the southwest corner of a net lane, off in that corner, where there's no driveway for either property.
So in the Conservation Commission meeting, they just say, be gone, right? Snow, that's your problem? So, right, you can't put it where, DPW doesn't, right, weigh in on Conservation Commission.
They've seen the plan
Plans.
since, they had no
Yeah.
comments.
I mean, it's been the biggest question of what happens with the snow,
Well, we call out on our plan that, that the purpose of that fence is to prevent snow storage in the wetland area, so we're kind of between a rock and a hard place.
I understand, but my problem becomes if there's an emergency, there's no guarantee that anybody, no fire department, no police, no ambulance is getting to that house during a snowstorm.
Mm.
Well, there's rooms on either side in the,
Right, yeah.
within the right of way. It's not gonna be as simple as it has been in the past, but they need to do a little
Yeah.
turning and back dragging, and but it's not something that those plow guys don't know how to do.
I guess the question I had, right, focused in on the tail little end of a net lane there with the request for a 42-inch high post and beam rail fence at the edge, right, that we were just talking about. So that's curious to me because, right, there's three things that we just talked about, or three things that have come up in past discussions. One is, my understanding, my recollection was that the abutter, right, there was a discussion with a abutter that lives right there and their request for some sort of screening, right, sort of like right in that corner, right? I don't know whether you've had discussions with that abutter or if they were at conservation meetings or where that ended. And then the other thing, right, you said that you're gonna have a discussion about how to best connect the walkway to a net lane, but in the plan here, right, we have a fence in the way, right? So, and then you have this whole snow storage thing. So this one little, what's that, like a 10-foot section of fence
Sure.
precludes at least 2 or 3 activities that need to happen in the tail end of a net lane on not your property, right, on town property. So to me, that's odd, right? That's a requirement from conservation that doesn't fit with what we typically look at as site plan review.
Yeah, I think we.
I don't know if
asked
I'm
all
making
of
too
those
much.
questions.
I don't know
No,
if
we
I'm
asked all
making
of
too
those
much of a
questions
deal out of
and-
that, right? But
Yeah, if I could add
Sure.
a couple things. So in terms of the connection of the boardwalk, wherever it hits that fence, we could leave a 4-foot wide opening for someone to walk through. That's an easy
Yeah, okay.
fix. In terms of screening of a fence, we are still proposing a 6-foot vinyl stockade along the southern limit of the net lane extension. I think it's somewhat of a moot point because the gentleman that lived at number 10 in that lane, his concern was, we were gonna have to change the grade a little bit to continue that.
Yeah.
And so he didn't want to be looking at some huge elevated roadway. We're kind of eliminating that now by just coming up with that driveway, and it's not really gonna be in his line of sight. We're still proposing to put that in there so he doesn't have to look at a driveway or anything like that. So that answers two of the
Alright.
concerns. The snow storage, I don't have much to add on that.
So, but I guess, right, I'm getting back to what do we need on a definitive subdivision plan? And if we have this thing that says, for us, you need to put in a 42-inch high post and rail fence in that location, and then you don't do it because you decided with conservation that you'd put a gap in the fence. Like now you won't have a problem with us, but now we're approving something that we know already might change. You have an agreement with conservation that you're going to change it, but I guess I don't like having that as a requirement in here that has the potential to change. Because I don't care if it changes, number one. Number two, like, now that we sort of, like, it's just not, it's bad form, right? It's bad form to have something in there. that-
Yeah, I mean, this boardwalk in particular is a bit new of a concept, I guess, in terms of a trail development. We've
Mhm.
gotten trails on other subdivisions, but this is a bit of a unique one in its connection. So we have been working with conservation to say, okay, what are those field changes and what's your process? And he feels pretty confident that in the field they can find the adequate answer to these. It's just awkward on the plan that
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was out there and it was probably a little drier, but I don't think the boardwalk doesn't have to go all the way to the end of a net lane.
yeah, there's a little bit
Farther
Yeah. Yeah.
down, so
Yeah.
you'd probably have some sort of a gravel trail
right.
down through there.
Mm-hmm.
But, and if we do want to change that fence, is that just a minor plan change that Andrew approves?
I guess I don't know, like what, right, this isn't site plan review,
Mhm.
right? This is a definitive subdivision. So that kind of detail, does it matter that it's on here? I mean, it's on here, it helps us understand, but is that really what we're approving?
No, really what you guys again are in focus of is the right-of-way proposal and even the driveway connection and the drainage. The boardwalk and the jurisdictional boundaries of this trail and its connections really are conservation, and then to a degree DPW and engineering as we work out the field adjustments. But really CPDC's focus comes back towards that. The right-of-way, I guess, layout, which I guess this is included in. That's kind of what makes it a little
That's-
right.
yes,
This is in
yeah,
the right.
it's in the right-of-way.
So, but that right-of-way is primarily jurisdictional wetlands. So,
And also, if you put that fence there, you're not going to get to that hydrant.
Yeah, so I mean, we commit
So
to
that
put-
whole conservation.
yeah, I mean this whole
that are
fence.
Worried about wetlands and not about public safety and public access and plowing roads.
Well, I guess the way that it's shown out, the fence is, it starts at the edge of pavement on the edge of the paved right of way of a net lane. To the south of that is a sidewalk, so you could walk around the fence on the sidewalk to get to the hydrant. I mean, I understand your concern, you have a hose going up
Well,
over it, you know?
You know, they use, that hydrant's primarily used for maintenance, for flushing that water main, so you need to be able to get the DPW truck in there and get the diffuser that's on the truck And then also the fire, you know, if they have to do work on it, they have to be able to get a backhoe in there. Just, it seems to me like you put a fence up there, it's gonna get torn down the first time DPW needs to get down there to do something. But I think, you know, like we said, that whole issue could probably get worked out in the field
Yeah.
with engineering and DPW and conservation all standing around going, so how do we want to do this?
I mean, I guess, can I ask, like, was there a pre-treatment concept in 4-bay for snow storage?
Yeah, and they said they didn't want it,
didn't
so.
want it.
And I mean, for the record, none of the neighbors wanted the boardwalk either, but, you know.
I just want to clarify, your concern is not so much with it as it is with it being on the plans? Just for
Yes.
clarification, okay.
I mean, let me clarify that. Because there are so many other issues that need to be worked out, I don't think that it being on the plan, I don't think that it's really gonna be built the way it's shown on the plan. And therefore, I'm not sure that it makes sense to have it on the plan, on a plan that we approve. That's,
Do we put a finding?
Yeah, I
on
was
the
gonna say, or
decision?
could we put it in, yeah,
but this isn't a site plan review, this is
Right.
a definitive subdivision, right? So it's the plan that we're approving. And that's what I just don't, I don't get,
No.
right? I don't know what on this plan is enforceable. Sounds odd to say it that way, but like, what are we really approving, right? We're not really approving all the details on here. The details are to inform the roadway layout.
Right.
I don't know.
Which is like non-existent.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So, I don't want to make a bigger deal of it at all than it needs to be.
No, I hear you. No, for sure.
And maybe that's just gets in the draft, in the decision, and we just leave it.
We've tried to word the conditions for flexibility in the field, but you know, you're right in terms of the plan
The plan,
endorsement and
yes.
Mylars and things like that.
Yeah.
That are typically.
Other,
So does the fence become actually a conservation issue and they can deal with the enforcement?
Enforcement in what sense?
Yeah, if the fence isn't built in the right location, whatever, then it's not CPDC's fence, basically, it's conservation's fence. Much like they may have a requirement for a divider between the wetlands, maybe an area of no mowing, whatever. Those are enforcement mechanisms or enforcement requirements for conservation, not under us.
The
I mean, the fence is coming from them.
Right, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
mean, like, if we endorsed plans, right, in a future stage, if we got there without it, then, yeah, it wouldn't really be necessarily your jurisdiction or decision authorizing and kind of conditioning that fence. It would be conservation's, it's written into.
Okay.
in the decision, in the findings, I don't see that fence specifically called out at a quick glance, which is good, right?
Mhm.
So,
It might be under a tree screening. Or might not be in there.
It's not in there, I think we kind of left it out given the conservation,
Yes, he's Chuck's like, I
So-
don't know what we're doing yet.
right?
so that's good, it's just a thing on the
Yeah,
plan,
it's just, yeah.
Yeah. all right. If we're good with that. Other comments or issues, things to focus on? We got a letter from engineering saying that they had no issues with the resident changes.
Yeah.
Right.
Everything is okay.
Do we will need to go through the waivers, but there's 10 of them. I know we've talked with this applicant about them before. Any ones that anyone feels like we need to have a discussion on?
The only one I would note that was of change was number 1, where originally we were requesting the profile of that 30-foot extension, but now it's a full waiver request, given that that's no longer proposed.
Right. I'll open it up to the public either here or online. Anyone with questions or comments?
I'm not seeing any online, but I did just get forwarded an email, which I'm happy. It was to conservation originally, so they've reviewed and kind of vetted it through the waterway. But I'm happy to add reference to that and add it to the packet. It just came in like 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago.
So shall we go through the decision and or close the public hearing?
Do we do the closed public hearing before or after we go through the decision?
We can do either way.
I'd close the public hearing decision.
In the past, I think the board has kept the public hearing open while reviewing the decision, in case anyone from the public had a question or
Yeah.
comment. But I will defer to the chairman.
I'm
I'm
fine
fine.
with keeping it open. to
Yeah,
go through
that's
here.
fine.
Yeah, since there hasn't been a lot of discussion on this tonight.
Oh, Ms. Kendra Cooper just raised their hand. If we want to jump.
Sure.
Yes, this is Kendra Cooper.
Hello.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, great, yeah.
Ms. Cooper, what's your
yeah.
address, please?
Yes, it's Kendra Cooper, 20 Covey Hill Road.
Thank you.
I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 8. And I did send some information to you tonight. I didn't realize that you didn't get the points that we'd made at the conservation meeting. I was listening to your discussion too about the snow, and I have to agree that the first snowstorm there's going to be, that fence is not going to exist anymore, because in a net drive, it's very, it would be very difficult for people unfamiliar with the area to not knock the snow into the wetlands. I mean, we'd hope not, but I am concerned because Covey Hill is where the wetlands pools. And in fact, I sent some photographs that I took yesterday of that area, the wetland area between Annette and Applegate, and there definitely is water pooling. The concern that we have, there are springs that are down towards Spruce Road that before the developments went in, were what feeds, and they still are, what feeds that area, that wetland area. That's where the proposed house would go. The concern for us downstream, and we don't really get notified because we're not direct abutters, but there's a drainage ditch that starts from those springs, feeds that wetland area, which definitely is a wetland area right now. You can see it from the photos that I guess you didn't get in time for the meeting. But the stream flows down behind Deborah Drive, goes underneath Deborah, then perpendicular with Covey Hill and on to the golf course. So there are those of us whose backyards abut. And there hasn't been a problem with flooding for years. Only once since the 1980s has the town ever maintained that the ditch, and it's always the neighbors that do it. I am very concerned, and as are other neighbors, with the boardwalk as far as it's becoming possibly an attractive nuisance. You know, not every gift to the town is to the town's benefit. I understand that conservation likes that idea, and but I'm not so sure, having lived here since the 80s, and our children went that way, you know, towards the Birch Meadow High School area. I'm not convinced that it's a good thing, but I'm also concerned that it might be a liability for the town to have a boardwalk that's constructed, but who will really ultimately maintain it. So we're concerned about a few things, but that area where the water pools and it's from springs further down, or up above actually, near Spruce Road, that water, that pools there, and that in a way saves us downstream from having a deluge. And I did ask at the conservation meeting for a third-party independent review. We thought that would be helpful, but they didn't go with that. And we're still concerned that once the pooling area and the 30, actually now it's 26 trees, which currently absorb water, there where the house will go, that once those trees aren't there, then is there an adequate amount of, you know, of consideration beyond the drainage from the house itself? Now, the house will be making it a non-permeable area. And so we're just concerned that that will make it so that the drainage area that's right there near where the house is going to go will not be able to take the extra water that will no longer be absorbed by trees. And I understand that there's an agreement that they can put trees in other areas of the town, but that doesn't really solve the potential problem of people living downstream here. And there are probably at least 10 to 12 houses, because there are also houses that are on Franklin Street whose backyards abut this drainage ditch. So, you know, those are the concerns that we've had, and we're really, you know, we'd hate to have, you know, established neighborhoods be disturbed because of a project that maybe didn't take enough into consideration how to make, you know, keep the water up there. I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm being clear enough for you, but you know, I think that's a concern, and I'm not even sure if it's something you can do much about at this stage. But that has been the issue that we've had concern with. And you know, we definitely, snow is an issue. Where's it going to go? But it's an issue across town with many projects. Doesn't seem to be something that projects seem to be concerned with sometimes, especially school projects, by the way, but that's another issue. So, you know, I just hope that there'll be enough in the engineering side of this plan so that those of us downstream won't end up having skating rinks in our backyards in the winter.
Yeah, and if I could, I'll have Andrew address this, but in the stormwater management report, we look at pre and post development. How much runoff you're getting, what the time of concentration is to certain areas, and with the designs, and Andrew, you can explain it a little better. With the designs, we generally have a decrease in runoff in post development.
Yeah, so we're capturing 100% of the impervious area that we're creating. The stormwater calculations take into account the conversion of wooded area to grass, you know, because there is some absorption factor from trees, but the calculations take that into consideration. to look at pre and post. And that's part of the reason too why we installed that perimeter trench drain, to make sure that we're not contributing any runoff to that, to neighboring properties or that drainage ditch that runs along the west side of the property. In terms of maintenance of the drainage ditch, that's a town issue. That's not anything we can control.
Yeah.
And also a response to the boardwalk, and, I don't know what all the discussions were with conservation on that, but when I was on conservation and we formed the Trails Committee, and we built a lot of boardwalks in areas that had trails or proposed trails that were basically impassable because of wetlands and water. And it's really had a benefit to the trail network in town. In this case, I can see if you live on a cul-de-sac, you may not want people walking through from one street to another, but where I live, I'm about 4 houses up from a cul-de-sac, and from my backyard, I can see 4 cul-de-sacs. And for my kids to walk to Barrow School on roads is a mile. If you could cut through from cul-de-sac to cul-de-sac, it would be a quarter mile. So it makes a huge difference if we want to have a walkable Reading to have cul-de-sacs connecting where we can do it without cutting through people's yards.
Yeah. Yes. So I do think some of the stuff that you brought up, and thank you, right, it's important to keep to keep some of this stuff at the forefront. As was mentioned, right, like some of that issue is maintaining the existing infrastructure. And we, I think as a community, just need to make sure that remains a focus. So but in terms of the impact of this, that's the analysis is that they've accommodated what the impact on the site. So I think, right, do we want to go through the draft decision?
Sure. So I'm just gonna start at the findings here and work our way down, and please, if you catch anything, just shout out at any time, any questions or comments. So we described the existing tract of land, which, as we know, is just under 55,000 square foot tract, vacant of structures, but maintains a large area of jurisdictional wetland area, a sewer and a drain easement as well for those who are unfamiliar. It's located entirely within the S20 zoning district and the Aquifer Protection District. The current proposal in front of us is to subdivide the lot into one buildable tract and a second parcel, we'll call it, or lot for the extension and layout of the public Annette Lane. That proposal is to extend Annette Lane on paper by about 187 feet in length, 50 feet wide, and connect it directly as a paper street to Applegate Lane across the wetland area. The applicant is proposing to construct no actual extension of that roadway to serve the proposed single-family dwelling, but instead just directly connect the driveway to the existing roadway of Annette specifically. That driveway is 19 feet wide by just under 150 feet long and designed to meet engineering and public safety standards. There is this pedestrian boardwalk proposed to connect Annette Lane and Applegate Lane through the vegetated wetlands, and a series of waivers have been requested from the subdivision rules and regs based on this proposed right-of-way design, or lack thereof, almost. So the zoning, again, it's S20 zoning district, requires a minimum of 20,000 square feet of area and 12,000 square feet of upland, 120 linear feet of frontage. All of that is met based on the extension of Annette Lane, including the frontage. They do meet the minimum upland area requirements as well. The proof of concept really is just, again, the layout plan proving that you can do a subdivision by right And in this unique case, because they can extend the existing layouts and connect to existing 50-foot right-of-way layouts, they were able to show that through the proof plan that could, in theory, be designed and built. Again, the wetlands have been delineated, and there are both and all 100-foot, 25-foot, and 35-foot buffer zones within and on the site, but the applicant's development is looking to stay out of those jurisdictional areas. But there is a notice of intent required, as well as the issuance of the order of conditions. The stormwater permit application was originally received due to the design of the site, and that again fell to conservation given their jurisdictional areas. Noting again here the existing drainage and sewer easements within the lot and project site. And again describing what is the proposed right-of-way, which is really to exist on paper. 50 feet wide and 187 feet long. The applicant is requesting to waive the construction of that way, the installation of any cul-de-sac to reduce the right-of-way width from 60 feet to 50 feet, which is again can be a by right condition, but we typically ask for the waiver regardless. To install the sidewalks and the granite monuments. There is a note that bituminous concrete shall be installed along the driveway for the drainage design, again helping direct that flow of the driveway to the catch basins. Snow storage, I just highlighted only because we were talking about it tonight. This is a condition as well below, but the applicant will determine an appropriate practice for snow storage and removal of snow with the conservation administrator and the DPW director, just so we can kind of vet that a bit further as we work through the permitting process. We've requested a waiver from a traffic study. There are a number of trees being removed. I believe it's 32 trees.
It's down to 26 now.
26 trees being removed. All replacement species proposed will be approved by the Conservation Commission during the permitting process. There is no street lighting proposed. It's been requested for a waiver due to the limited scope. Typical driveway and house-mounted lights are expected. The utility connections are served through a net lane and do not impact the 25 or 35-foot zones of vegetation, so they've stayed entirely within their limit of work. The drainage design, as we described, will capture all impervious area, including the dwelling itself, through roof leaders, and the driveway design through another infiltration basin towards the bottom of such. And again, we described that 160-foot plus boardwalk and trail connection through the two ways. As always, per Mass General Law, the applicant shall consider orienting the home so that future owners can benefit from rooftop solar installations, should they desire, and the Board of Health did receive a copy of these plans and application. Getting now to some of the actionable items for now and the future. So the waivers being requested, I believe there are about 10 of them. Yep. Again, the applicant is requesting a waiver from requiring a detail of the profile of both the existing and proposed right-of-way, given that there is no physical extension of a net lane proposed because it will exist simply on paper.
Andrew, 1A, the first paragraph, first line.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the no extension of a net lane and then an extension of a net lane.
Yes, I just cleaned that up. I caught that, so on screen it should be a little cleaner. That is good. Sorry about that. Good catch there. Number 2, a waiver from requiring a full traffic study due to what they feel is a proposed modest scope of one additional single-family home. Number 3, waiver request from the subdivision rules and regs environmental impact report as described in those regulations, given that the project has been vetted, reviewed, and approved now through the Conservation Commission, who had similar requirements, if not then some. A waiver requiring a right-of-way width of 60 feet. Again, by right can be done at 50 feet wide given the two connecting areas, but we typically request and include this waiver language so that it's very clear. Number 5 is the waiver from the requiring of the installation of granite curbing and monuments respectively. Again, given that there's no actual right-of-way construction and that the driveway itself has some structural features to it to help control the drainage, they are requesting that waiver. No installation of street lighting, given that there is no street to be constructed. Similar for turning circle and landscape island respectively. Can't be done when there's no right of way to be constructed. Same for sidewalks, same for street trees, and same for the entire construction of section 8.0, which is that right of way design standards. Maybe I'll stop there for a second. Any question or discussion on waivers? Conditions, most are typical of any subdivision approval. No further subdivision of this land or of this proposal, so it's limited to the number of lots shown. It's actually really what the area size is kind of limited to regardless. Other permits, the applicant shall receive all permits through engineering, DPW, MassDOT as needed, not really needed here, but conservation, Board of Health, X, Y, and Z throughout the permitting process. They shall remain in compliance with the order of conditions issued to the project, and that the property shall be maintained in a neat and orderly fashion while the development is pending and ongoing. Prior to plan endorsement, which the CPDC will need to do at a later stage should they approve the project, we did request, based on tonight's discussion, that for that plan set, we would likely request that they remove reference to the 42-inch fence placed at the end of the right-of-way. Engineering comments, we would want them to, of course, continue working with engineering, conditioned a number of times throughout. Snow storage, again, kind of keep that coordination and discussion ongoing, make sure all are aware, especially mostly DPW is aware of the practices they'll have to put in place for that, for a net lane. Electric utility to be reviewed and vetted by RMLD. We will need Mylars for endorsement. The applicant shall become the owner of record. That's actually already happened, and that should be noted on the Mylars and any endorsed plans. And trees, landscaping, and screening, we should have a better idea through the permitting process as we get closer to endorsement what that will look like. Prior to the release of any lot, this is where it gets a bit interesting. So typically a subdivision is bonded for the construction of a right-of-way. Given that there is no construction of a right-of-way, it's likely not to be needed here, but I wanted to keep this language in place just to do a bit more due diligence on that process and what it will look like in terms of the issuance of a building permit. But in all likelihood, it should just jump straight to building permitting, given that they won't need to be released from any covenant or surety. But given that they are still using a public way, I just wanted to keep these in here a bit to kind of cross the T's, dot the I's when we get to that process.
Well, and there has been certain representations about construction of things in the public way,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Notably a boardwalk. So it's not a road, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
it is
That's a
something
good
that
question, too,
something
because-
that they've said that they would build within the right of way. So
Yeah, it's a good note because I'll check what the conservation bond will hold and if it includes that
yeah.
boardwalk, and if not, we'll work together to figure that out. Prior to site work, again, make sure all issues and comments are resolved with the engineering department. Any final soil boring and analysis to be conducted, all of those reports shall be submitted for review and approval. Should they require any necessary changes to the drainage design, we would want to see that on a red line plan and summarized for any approval process, including even a potential modification through Cpdc, should that be triggered, but not expected here, to my knowledge. pre-construction meeting, typical for staff and applicant and general contractor to meet, make sure everything's aligned, they understand their requirements, this condition and other permits, and we understand their schedule and practice that they'll be working towards, especially with the wetland boundaries and erosion control needs. Recorded plans, we'll want to copy that the Mylars that are to be endorsed, if we get there, are recorded at the Registry of Deeds, and we get a copy of those. Yeah, and erosion controls and notices and tree removal, especially that if anything is in the public way, determined to be in the public way, the tree warden would need to have a hearing related to such. Again, work through that through the permitting process, none to my awareness tonight. Prior to the issuance of an actual building permit, we'll want to definitely look at the driveway permit specifically for this one single driveway through the engineering division and the plot plan for the plan of land. And there will be some more specific building permit plans in terms of the architectural design, foundations, process, that whole shebang. During construction, again, order of conditions has a number of conditions related to compliance, utilities and materials to be installed and stockpiled safely and correctly per their construction plan. We have the right for inspections. Should there be a bond, they can, through construction, request any reduction to that if work is completed. And per state law, there's a time limit of 2 years for completion from the endorsement of the plan or a time set forth in any surety. It's either is, whichever is earlier. Prior to the certificate of occupancy for a lot, this is again where some new conditions come up. So yes, we'll want the conveyance of easements and utilities, which is typical, but specific to the right-of-way ownership, we'll want to see that the applicant is holding interest in the right-of-way and not transferring it to the single-family lot. Whoever is to own that single-family lot in the future. So we do that because the applicant, again, typically it's a built right-of-way. So we want them to maintain ownership to transfer to the land to the town at a future date. It's gonna be a similar process. Again, the town's gonna have to like accept this right-of-way extension. So we just want to have the applicant maintain ownership of that right-of-way and not the homeowner who would have to do that process then. Drainage shall be reviewed and inspected. O&M plan for specific to the drainage system and utilities in this case, given the private connections. We'll want to see an O&M plan. We'll want to see that boardwalk completed prior to occupancy and any necessary easements. Given that they're within public ways, we'll work through that. Either easement, again, either right-of-way transfership or easement or both. We'll work through that process. Post-occupancy, simply as-built plans, close of any bonds and guarantees, and the certificate of completion should they get there. I think that
All
covers
right.
it.
There's a lot there.
I
There
had a
is.
quick question. During,
Yep.
you say, under the section during construction, item 6, time limit for completion. Is that completion of the improvements required for the subdivision or for the house itself?
That is the subdivision
So it'd be
itself
that would
under
be the
subdivision
roadway,
control law,
utilities,
correct?
and-
Yeah. And there is, I believe, a 1-year extension allowed should they, or at least they would have to come for approval of a 1-year extension should they not meet that time frame.
The other issue I have, Andrew, is prior to issuance of certificate of occupancy, number 2, right-of-way ownership. Do we not want it to be assigned to the developed tract? And the only reason I say that is, no offense, sir, but if the, I'm assuming it's an entity, an LLC or something that actually does the work, it's not under your name.
Mhm.
If that LLC is dissolved, where does the ownership go?
Sorry, I should clarify. By developed tract, we meant the residential lot. Like, so there's someone that could purchase that. I don't know if it's a builder or not, but we don't want the right of way to be transferred to a homeowner who then would have to undergo the process of transferring it to the town. We want the applicant today to see the process from start to end.
But if that process goes beyond the life of the entity that's developing,
Mm-hmm.
then what happens to that ownership?
Well, isn't that right? As is stated here, right? That ownership is going to transfer to the town. So this whole process doesn't.
Only if the town actually accepts it.
Yeah.
So if it goes before town meeting for whatever reason doesn't accept it, then the entity still owns
Yes.
the right of
Yep.
way.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, I assume that entity will dissolve into nothingness,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
and the right of way, I don't know what happens
It's
to it.
not going to town meeting though, we'll just go to like conservation.
For the acceptance of the way, it's a town meeting process. It's on paper or not, is my understanding.
Well, then doesn't it go revert to like a paper street, like
Right.
Yeah,
everything
basically.
else, you know?
Basically,
So
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I mean, which isn't
maybe why,
horrible
right?
in this case,
Which is maybe why we also get an easement, public access easement
right,
across the
across
yes.
that. Yep.
okay.
No, good question.
So next step.
The next, I was looking on any other questions. All right, I think we, given that there's been no questions from the public, we want to close the public hearing. And then vote on waivers, which I think we can do as a whole bunch.
Motion to close the public hearing for Zero Annette Lane.
Second.
All those in favor? All right. So I would propose to vote on all 10 waivers at once, unless someone thinks that we should do it some other way. All right, hearing. Anyone want to make a motion on the waivers?
Motion to approve the waivers 1 through 10 for Zero Annette Lane.
Second.
All those in favor? All right. And then we've got the decision.
Yeah.
Which would be a motion to approve the definitive subdivision plan for Zero Annette Lane as
Second.
amended.
Yeah, as amended, yeah.
Second.
All those in favor? All right.
Great.
4-1.
All right, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Follow up, Andrew.
All right, sounds great, thank you.
Are we good to keep going, or do you want anyone?
Wouldn't mind just running out and
Yeah, like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Quick ones. Yes.
For those share screen.
I just before I said that, so
Oh.
yeah, all participants can do it right now. I figured I should just start it.
Yeah, I like the way it gets.
I was like, these all are names.
Yeah.
So
Save those seats.
I also. Don't prove me wrong.
Please. That's the room to unmute.
Oh, you're not using this? You're not. So me?
All right, we good?
We're
We're
good.
back? All right, we are reconvened. And the next item on our agenda is a continued public hearing for a special permit stormwater and site plan review at 252, 258, 262 Main Street, 10 Pinedale Ave.
Good evening.
Good evening.
For the record, my name is Attorney Jesse Schomer. I represent the applicant on this matter. Andrew, would it be agreeable for me to screen share a slideshow?
Should be good to
Yep.
go.
Okay, perfect. I'm muted, so no worries about that. Let's just go full screen here. Maybe we will. Right, so with me tonight, board members, are members of the development team, Rob Pacioni of RP Architectural Studios, Carlton Quinn of Allen and Major Associates, as well as representative of the developer, Severio Fulciniti. Since we were last here before you in February, we have submitted some additional project materials, which minor changes in our view compared to the previous submissions, primarily intended to coordinate the architectural and civil and landscaping plans, as well as to flesh out some of the additional details that were discussed at the previous hearing with the commission. I'll just briefly outline the submissions and some of the major points that were addressed in the updated materials for the members' benefit, and then open it up to questions from the board and members of the public. And also members of our team are available to run through their plans in detail if that would be helpful for the board, but we'll defer to your preference on that point. The primary points that were addressed in the updated submittals were, as I mentioned, the revised civil and architectural plans. Those also include a comprehensive stormwater management and drainage report that was updated based on the new project layout and its location on the site. The additional submissions also included an operation and management plan for the site once it is developed and built for operating things like trash, pest control, snow storage, things like that once the project is built and occupied, as well as a comprehensive construction management plan that outlines measures to be taken to protect the neighborhood and the abutters from impacts from the project construction, as well as how that will be sequenced and managed to ensure smooth operations on the site. For our benefit, we would request some feedback from the board tonight on a couple of points. The first one being the question that we addressed in some length at the previous hearing regarding whether a landscape berm would be developed at the rear of the site. There was some discussion of that, and we didn't sense that the neighborhood was universally in support of that option. So we really wanted to get some feedback tonight from the neighborhood and from the board on your preference on that regard. For the current submission, we have eliminated the berm, and we'll walk through in detail the reason why we've done that, and kind of present the pros and cons of that option. The other is a proposal to remove a portion of the fence on the left side of the property, and I'll outline that when I go through the civil plan. These I just mentioned. So on the screen here is the updated civil layout plan, and I'll just highlight a couple of points if I may. The first point to note is that the sidewalks have been revised per comments at the previous hearing to replace the bituminous asphalt with poured concrete. We're proposing to tie those in at the plan upper right here at 10 Pinevale and wrap it entirely around the corner of 2 Pinevale throughout the site here and along its entire frontage on Main Street. We did meet, since we were last before you, on March the 1st with the Farrells, who are here tonight, and we got some feedback from them on how that will be accomplished logistically in terms of coordinating the work with the sidewalk with their existing driveway and other aspects of the site.
Jesse, can I interrupt while you're going?
Sure.
So for the sidewalk, and I'm not familiar with the existing conditions, but does the curbing need to be part of that, or is there adequate curbing out there now?
I'm gonna have to defer that one to Carlton.
Well, anything that's within the right of way would be granite. Granite curb, we wouldn't put bituminous back if there's
Okay.
bituminous now.
I didn't know if you were, like, especially on Pinevale, just gonna tear out the old and put in new.
Yeah, no, we'll be required to put in granite
New
on
curb in.
on Main Street, and it's a town standard to put granite anywhere you put sidewalks.
So before we leave this point, since we're, I remember the conversation last time. And right, Pinevale is one thing, but I think, right, a comment was made last time about concrete sidewalk on Main Street with the sort of misunderstanding that currently on Main Street, it's all bituminous sidewalk. So I guess I would really ask the town, right, town engineering, of whether that makes sense to have one segment concrete where the rest is.
I would say it should be concrete. You know, it's the front of the building, it dresses it up.
Yeah, I think.
It'll maintains a lot better.
Yeah.
You know, you get bituminous, it starts, waving up and down, and then it gets weeds and stuff like that, so.
Yeah, I agree. And should Main Street ever see other development applications, it gives us a precedent to set in continuous area to build towards. But I can confirm.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So the next change that I'll highlight has to do with the top left of the site here. We've made some improvements to accessibility to get access to the loading zone, the garbage handling area, as well as across the parking lot here to the 2 proposed EV charging stations here. Improving the accessibility has reduced the number of parking spaces by 2, so we're now sitting at 70 parking spaces, which is still 7 more than is required by the zoning bylaw. So we still have plenty of parking, but we've improved how this area of the site will be operating and improved accessibility here. You see the crossing here going across from where the 2 accessible spaces are here, and then across this crossing here. We're still maintaining the same loading zone as was previously presented. Expanded slightly the garbage enclosure here, and I'll go through that in just a moment. And the ride sharing space at the top right of the project site is also maintained in the same location. Another detail that was discussed with the Farrells at our meeting was construction impact to their property and some buffering and screening to improve the condition of the residents there while construction is underway. We'll be doing a 8-foot privacy fence along the property line there. There was some conversation with the Farrells about the retaining wall that's shown on the civil plan, which is kind of toes along the property line, but it actually is on our property as well as partially on the town's right of way. So we're exploring options for protecting that wall during construction. The fence that I mentioned, you'll see on the left side of the site, we are showing a perimeter fence along the entire property line. The point that we would request some feedback from members of the board and members of the public, if they have some opinion about that, is whether the board would be agreeable to eliminating the fence to plan south below the dumpster area. And the reason why we're proposing to do that is to avoid creating sort of a visual silo where you have these commercial properties, this property, and then the next one next door, really being cordoned off entirely with fencing along the property line. We think it would open up the site a little bit and not impact neighbors unduly, since that's a commercial property currently. And obviously the residential neighbors, we're not proposing to do anything with that fence. As I just mentioned, we are proposing a privacy fence there. And as I mentioned also, the stone wall along 2 Pinevale and Main Street is going to be addressed. Moving to the next slide, this is a cut sheet of the proposed dumpster. There's a couple of typographical errors on the plan sheets on the right there that should say 10-yard recyclables and 10-yard garbage containers. The increased size of the garbage enclosure has allowed for these larger size dumpsters. They're proposed to be 10 yards. There'll be 2 of them, and that can accommodate 4,800 pounds per pickup. That's two of those, so 2,400 pounds per dumpster. The dumpster is located in the same spot as was previously shown to the board at the last meeting. We're proposing to collect this on a weekly basis with frequency increased if that's necessary, but we think weekly will be enough based on the size of those dumpsters. That will allow for a couple of configurations as we're showing there. We haven't selected the final configuration, but it does give you some options for how that's going to be done. And that will be maintained by a landscape vendor and serviced by a pest management vendor. Those measures are outlined in the O&M plan. One additional point that's not noted in the bullets here, we did want to make sure it was understood that we are not proposing to use any kind of trash chutes in the building. That's discussed in the letter that I submitted to the board, but that's primarily due to sanitation concerns about misuse by residents, not understanding that you can't put large things in those chutes, as well as noise and just the general nuisance of having those inside the building. We think that the trash management would be better handled by residents bringing their garbage down to the dumpsters. And that's also partially informed the decision to improve accessibility on the site to make sure that residents are able to get over there safely to deposit their garbage in that location. Moving on to the point of landscaping, there's an illustrative slide here that kind of gives a sense of what the elevated berm would have been. As you can see, the gentleman in the picture there is standing with his feet at the grass level, and just below his waist is the raised ground level. That is a proposed berm, and you see you're kind of limited when you use those to the kinds of landscaping that's shown there. It's really just arborvitae that you can grow in those. So that was what was presented previously. What we're proposing now is to eliminate the use of that berm and instead to really vegetate the rear of the site with a much more varied, lush group of plantings out there. We also submitted some additional materials from our landscape architect from Allen and Major, who was of the opinion that actually installing the berm would have a negative impact on those existing trees based on packing down soil in the root area, and that can have an adverse impact on those trees due to limited oxygen getting down to those roots. So her view was that the best chance of making sure those trees survive is to actually avoid the berm and instead to plant the variety of plantings that you see here. And we've got a site section that I'll show you in just a moment that shows that even without the berm, there is going to be a pretty extensive and lush buffer at the edge of the property line here. This is the site section plan that we discussed at the previous hearing, and the way that this is shown, this is also in the civil materials. You see the section is cut from basically the middle of the site in Main Street through the building to the back of the site, and you see it picks up to plan left there slightly from where it sits on the right of way. We've got some plantings there, the pillar oak in front of the building. You see the building, and then the dashed line gives you a sense of the existing grade. It'll be graded down slightly towards the rear of the site primarily, and then smoothed out at the end. And then you've got the existing trees there, as well as some of the proposed landscaping there. And you see time to maturity for those pillar oaks, 20 years, and the mature height is 60 feet. So those will become quite substantial trees over the years. Architecturally, we have made a few revisions since last we were before you. Rob can run through his full set of plans in detail if that would be helpful for the board. But with the elimination of the roof deck, we're proposing some balconies facing Main Street. These are not facing inward. These are facing out over Main Street to provide a little bit of additional space for the residents, some gathering space and outdoor space, which is a great benefit to the residents and a great amenity. Additionally, we've made some cut-ins at the sides of the building here. These have reduced the square footage of some of those units and sort of traded off for some small balconies on the side there. That's the conclusion of my presentation, board members. So I'll stop there. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. And if you'd like full presentation from our design team, we're happy to present those as well.
So any questions from the board, sort of at this higher level what was presented?
No, just one comment. Yeah, I agree. Removing the fence is a good idea.
Yeah, right. In some other applications that we've had recently, right, there's been discussion at this board about, right, really, what are you doing when you fence off an entire site, especially, sort of minimizing that parcel to parcel connectivity. There's some reason, sometimes you want to do that. And there's some reasons sometimes where it's just like the default.
Yeah.
And you've accurately seen, right, like identified, between the two parcels there, it seemed more like the default. I do recall though, right, some public comment last time, I think during our last meeting about fencing. And I guess I don't recall, I remember that there was a conversation or a comment, and I sort of would like to hear.
From the public?
Yeah, if I'm not thinking about, if there's something else to think about.
I'm certain
on
I'll
that
be
side.
corrected, but I think that most of that fencing had to do with gating between the residential and the property.
I think you're right, but.
There was a discussion about a gate, and we're not proposing one
Yeah.
at this point.
Does anyone want to see or spend the time going through details from anyone else on the team?
At this point, I think comments from the public would probably be appreciated by the public.
Yeah. But before we go to that, any?
I'm still a little puzzled about the berm in the back versus the landscaping. I think the graphic of the person standing in front of the trees, but did you have a rendering of what that would look like with the landscaping from a visual looking through to the backyard as opposed to a landscape plan?
We've not done a rendering or an elevation of that. It's just this cross section that we submitted to give a sense of that. It would vary quite a bit depending on where you're.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how much screening you're going to have with and I'm not a botanist, so I don't really say what kind of tree it is. I don't know what it looks like unless it's a maple or pine.
If it would be helpful, I can put up the.
The original package did have a rendering in it.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, that was the pre-run.
I really appreciate that you put a site section that is extremely illustrative. Thank you.
Is that good? That's helpful.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes. It makes a lot more sense.
Were you?
I'm just
Do you
looking.
find it
If I
something?
just want, if
Yeah,
I could, I just wanted to
saw it in
confirm.
your submittal, so.
Oh, okay, you did. Okay, good.
You saw what?
I saw, yeah, in his submittal, they had a picture of it, which I had thought I'd seen.
The letter from Jackie too. Oh, she
Yeah.
explained it all.
Mhm. Yep.
All right,
I'll cede the floor.
thank you. All right, like to open it up to the public, either folks here, if you have comments, come to the podium or online.
Take the Zoom one.
Good evening, Mike Farrell, 2 Pinevale Ave. The balconies. Can I get more details, because I can't get it through my head where the balconies are and what direction they're facing.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right.
My name is Rob Passioni. I am the architect from RP Architectural Studio. My office is in Wayland. Would it be possible to bring up the architectural plans? Point out those balconies.
Do you need the plan?
If we have the submission, like the full set of drawings would be, I think, easier, a little more descriptive, but yeah. Give me here. One second. Jesse, how do I scroll to the different sheets here? Is there a button I'm missing? Sorry, what was that, Rob? How do I scroll to the next sheet?
Up and down.
Oh, I was pressing, it wasn't working.
Old fashioned.
All right. That's pretty simple. Okay, so balconies, if we want, this is the top floor, the 4th floor. The bottom part of the plan is is facing Main Street. So if everyone remembers, we have the setback from Main Street of 10 feet, which you can see in the upper elevation. So that is the right side of that upper elevation is the Main Street side. And you see how the front of the upper floor is set back. So that extra roof space is where we created the balcony. And I should really call it a roof deck more than a balcony. Basically this unit, this area in here is the roof deck that we added in. So essentially this unit has an access door, here, and an access door here.
In the front,
In the front facing Main Street, correct?
are there balconies on the sides as well?
No, there's none on the side. So this is the side facing Pinevale. There is a recessed roof deck right here. Not a balcony, but a small
As a
roof deck.
balcony?
Roof deck. At the 4th floor, there's a small roof deck just at the 4th floor. And that hasn't changed. That was in our submission from last week.
Roof deck is facing.
Roof
deck
is facing Pinevale.
Yeah, 100%.
Is there a roof deck on the Pinevale side?
There's a small roof
The yellow.
deck right here. It's recessed into the side of the building.
Okay,
And then what we also that was last submission we had made that addition to the plan. What we changed for this week was in the rear, we have this balcony here. We also had a balcony, these two were also balconies. What we did was we actually pushed them into the building a little bit. So now they're recessed into the building, similar to this. So that was the other change that we made.
So I think it's important, right, to understand like what the viable use of those balconies are, right? The dimensions. It's hard from the version that I have on my screen, right? I think on the rear of the building, right, does that say 3 feet 6 inches wide?
Yeah, let me zoom in here real quick and I'll.
So if you get a chair out there, you're challenged.
Yeah,
you're
they're not.
You're in.
They're not
That's
very large. Correct.
Yeah.
Fairly small.
what about the roof deck? How big is that?
On the Pinevale side, right? That's, what is it, 8 by 8?
Yeah, those are a little bit bigger. The Pinevale side, yeah, roughly 8 by 8. Yep, exactly.
And what is that the use for?
Just essentially giving some people a little bit of outdoor space.
Rob, just to clarify, I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting.
No, go ahead.
Just because Lynn, I know you're concerned that it's a public roof deck, it is not, it's private to that individual unit, so it's basically space. that
Private
they
to
would-
who?
The one unit that it's off of, it's not, what you're imagining is the original roof deck that was on top, it is not that, it's not public use space.
So it's exclusive to one.
Correct, exactly, yeah.
So you're referring to the small ones facing the back? Or
No,
the
we're
one
just
facing
talking about the ones
Pineville?
facing Pineville, there's one on one
The
side of
bigger one, the bigger square on the
one on the
right?
south and one on the north,
Yeah. So the way that I read this, like every outdoor space, right? There's no publicly accessible outdoor spaces. They're all to that one unit, right? Some of them are pretty small, very small. The ones on the front, what's that? 8 by 8?
Depends.
Yeah.
At the front side of the building.
The
yeah.
front is
They're much larger than the other one. So yeah, 8 feet wide, and then depending, one's 23 feet, one is closer to about 40 feet, and then
yeah.
again 40 feet again. So we just have more roof space to work with there essentially. So.
And what is the dimensions on the one on the Pineville side?
The one on the Pineville side is 8 foot by 8 foot, and that's exclusive to this rear unit right here. So there's a door right here and just accesses this little outdoor area.
And then, as we're talking about the outdoor spaces, is that as you go down to the third floor, right? Did I see there's some on the back again? Those smaller, right, 3 foot wide.
Yeah, exactly. So
spaces.
on the third floor, there's just the 3 at the rear. So again, they're all balconies. In our last submission, this submission, we just pulled those 2 into the footprint of the building. But those are the smaller ones just in the rear. And then on the second floor, same thing. So we've essentially we had those in the back the whole time. We just pulled them in. But on the second and third floor, it's just in the rear.
Will the decks have a fence?
Yeah, they'll have a rail. Yep.
A rail, but not a fence?
No, it won't be like a wall or anything. It's a basically 3'6" tall fence, which I can show you guys. Oop. So zoom in a little bit here. So you can, oops. So you can see these are the balconies off the back, but this is a horizontal decorative railing is what we are proposing. And then you can see in the front elevation facing Main Street, we just did a continuous railing around the front here.
Anything else on the
Other-
balconies? There's someone on Zoom. I can go to Sarah on
Oh.
Zoom.
Yeah.
Hello, this is Sarah Fuller, 24 Pineville Ave. Actually asking a question on behalf of Tricia McCarthy. Sorry. She was wondering if 10 Pineville Ave meets the lot minimum requirements once part of the backyard is eliminated and rolled into this property.
So I can field that one.
Sure.
The proposal is for the.
I'm sorry, can you?
Sure, yes, I'm sorry. The proposal for how we're going to handle the 10 Pineville is not to carve off part of the property, but instead to handle that through a private easement from the one parcel to the other parcel, which would not be a transfer of ownership, just a right to use that area for parking and for access. And it would be an exclusive right that gets conveyed from one property to the other to ensure that that's a perpetual right to use that.
So, yeah, so right, the parcel stays.
Yeah.
the
The
same
parcel
as-
itself, in terms of the boundaries of it, it doesn't change in any way.
But there's a fence that goes up there between the two?
Yes, there is.
And what type of a fence is that?
Do you have, is it a solid wood, I believe, right?
It's same fence. I don't know if it's a solid fence, whether it's vinyl or wood, we haven't decided.
It's vinyl.
Vinyl, white
Yeah,
vinyl,
it's actually like a brown color.
a brown vinyl fence.
So the question for those at home was, whether there's a fence that between the 10 Pinevale Ave property and the rest of the site.
And there is.
Yes, there will be, and right, did I hear a brown 6-foot brown vinyl fence?
Yeah, and we've also added additional landscape screening on the current driveway side of 10 Pinevale, which is adjacent to 12 Pinevale.
All right.
So we're adding additional screening, fencing, so there'll be 2 layers of fence and landscape screening.
All right.
In 2 spots.
So the comment was there's going to be, in addition to the fence, there's going to be additional landscaping added, sort of, as I'm looking at the plan now, like throughout that area in the back of 10 Pineville.
Yeah, we've intentionally relocated the driveway for that purpose.
Yeah. Other.
There's another name on Zoom.
Could that easement then be described a little bit more about what does that easement do between 10 Pinevale and the project? We're a little bit concerned about eventually, or when things progress, there will be an opening from the project to Pinevale through this easement. So if someone could clarify what the easement is.
I can do that. So essentially what.
Repeat the question.
The question is what is the easement between 10 Pinevale and the development site? What does it do? The easement, what it does is it conveys exclusive property rights from 10 Pinevale to use the area. And essentially what we'll do is we'll carve out the area that's formed by the fence line and then go along the property line. And it's an exclusive right from 10 Pinevale to use that area by the development in perpetuity, to maintain the fence, to maintain the landscaping, the rideshare parking, the parking spaces, the access, just everything that needs to happen in that area is conveyed to the development site, and it's a perpetual right. It doesn't address any issue of passing and repassing. The owners of 10 Pinevale will not have rights to go into this area, so there won't be passage going that way. And we're not proposing to create any kind of right of passage from the development site to go the other direction. That would need to be an easement, and we're not proposing to do that in any way.
So I also think that that's addressed sort of like anything else on this site, right? This site, both parcels will be subject to this site plan review, right? And so we can put specific conditions in the site plan conditions that there isn't passage between the two, and so that 7-10 years from now, if suddenly someone creates a passage, you can go back to the town and say, hey, these they weren't allowed to do this, and then the town can then take, I don't want to say take action, but take action.
They
right?
could, and also it would be, it would be a police matter, frankly, because it would be a trespassing. We wouldn't have the right to go on there anyway. So you could call Andrew, and then you could call the chief of police and tell him that we're walking through your property.
I don't want to open the can of worms, but I'm going to. My question for the public is the concern about pedestrian traffic or vehicular traffic going from Pinevale to the property?
Both.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify it and understand what your concerns were.
We think we're beyond the vehicular issue, right?
Right.
We're also concerned about the preservation of the neighborhood as far as walking.
Okay. Thank you.
And we're not proposing either. No pedestrian and no vehicular.
Thanks for the explanation on the easement, I didn't understand.
You're welcome.
So since we're talking about fencing, right, you guys here in the room, right, heard the question both from the developer and sort of our response about the fencing on the south side of the property adjacent to the what's the name of it? What? Carter and Coleman building. I think from the boards, or at least the people that have expressed that, is that, you know, we always look, especially between, you know, two similar land uses, we try and encourage, you know, to have no fences so people can go back and forth. Does anyone have some concern about fencing on that end? I'm gonna limit, right, that conversation not about specifically the dumpster area, because I think from the dumpster area further back, that's a different discussion, but down closer to Main Street where there's, you know, where the parking lot is.
Could you bring the map up so we
Sure.
can see what we're talking about?
Anyone?
Did you want me to do that, or?
If whoever has control.
I have a question. What do we think about vinyl fencing? Is that something that we're in support of, or I don't know? I haven't. I would not like it. I mean, I would prefer a wooden type, but
I think
I think you need to allow the developers
to have it.
to have it.
The only thing that I worry about is, did you see the fence that happened, the melting brown fence recently that happened on Middlesex Avenue? I would just be cautious of material.
So the area that we're
As
proposing
an
is
architect,
this,
yeah.
this side of the site here.
Yeah.
Roughly down from the dumpster enclosure, which I'm marking with my cursor there. So from there to Main Street. And there, this whole area, this is all landscaped, so there will be a definitive property boundary that's marked by that. We think it would open it up to eliminate.
There's also a retaining wall, correct?
I think that's right. Is that?
It looks like retaining wall runs from at Main Street. It starts and it goes up as high as 4 feet, about the middle. So it's not like there's no delineation of where the end of the parking is.
And would the regrading of the site affect that?
Engineer, I'm just looking at the grading drawing, and it shows a retaining wall
Oh, it shows one, not that it's existing.
with a fence on top of it.
Yeah, so we probably do need a wall on top of the retaining wall as fall protection, just because of the height of the wall. If someone was working on the other side of the property and tripped and fell over or something, you'd want some fall protection. It doesn't have to be a privacy fence, it just needs to be 42 inches high. It can be made out of anything.
So how high is that retaining wall there?
At its max is about 4 feet.
All right.
If you go further into that corner, we can't see the fence in the back part where the loading dock goes all the way back.
It's a continuous one along the property line along the entire boundary, about 1 foot off the property.
So what you're saying is it's required, we need to have a fence that goes all the way out to Main Street for fall protection.
We would need it on top of the retaining wall. I would certainly recommend it. Again, it doesn't have to be a privacy fence, it could be something else.
I guess that being said, my preference would be, right, maybe it's down to the like 2 parking spaces towards Main Street is still a privacy fence, just to sort of like keep the trash area back behind there, but then have something that isn't a privacy fence, right? That opens up the view a little bit more, all the way down. And I don't know, I don't know what that is, whether that's a, black, rail fence or
Yeah,
or a
I
split
would
rail or
need to
something.
discuss that with
Yeah,
him, but
yeah.
again, I think once the retaining wall gets down to about 2 feet, you could probably end it somewhere there. It doesn't have to be, on top of a 1 foot retaining wall, but anything over 2 feet, I'd recommend a wall, fence on top of the wall for fall protection.
Jennifer Killian, 12 Pineville Ave. I'm going to come up here with this guy's computer, if you don't mind. And that's okay. So I'm obviously at 12 Pineville Ave, and just looking at diagram 1, in the kind of overview of the changes, I just wanted to talk a little bit more, well, one about the fence, the color of the fence, the look of the fence. But also, really, is there an opportunity to kind of put some natural buffer between the fence and the parking area? So if you see kind of where that garage is being removed, like right now or prior to this, that would be my kind of natural buffer to the development. So with that coming down and the 6-foot fence coming up, if there's a way to kind of put some additional, vegetation there that would reduce the noise of kind of the parking and activity of that parking lot, that would be helpful. And the point about, if we could look at the color of the fence, that's gonna go between this area, a brown wood fence would be drastically, it's just not really, it would really look out of place for my property in the way that it's kind of cutting across towards my garage. So that's just something I was hoping.
As opposed to white vinyl?
I have white vinyl around my perimeter right now, so I'd be, like, white vinyl for me is gonna look a little bit more, like it's, the property is more kind of aesthetically pleasing versus kind of a brown wood fence.
So I'm just gonna put it out there, right, is that we find that you don't want Cpdc in the middle of two abutters fence decisions, right? And it usually works out pretty well when, applicant and abutter get together and figure out, because I'm sure, right, they don't care.
Yeah, it was just the first time I heard brown.
So like,
No problem.
yeah, like.
I'll match it to your fence, not a problem.
It's such a little thing, but it would in terms of
Yeah.
appearance, would
It-
look a
yeah.
little like a sore thumb right there. I'll just put it out there, most of my concerns have not changed from our meeting a month ago. I still have concerns about the dumpster area, and I hear loud and clear that we can't judge, what's gonna happen here, based on what is happening in the other business or commercial properties surrounding us. But it's hard not to, and I know there's talk about an O&M plan and a civil, I don't see those things loaded on the website, so I don't know if that's something that we have the ability to take a look at. It's hard, knowing that some of those dumpster areas surrounding our neighborhood are really being maintained by paid employees. It's hard to imagine an apartment building full of residents being diligent about kind of shutting it. And I sent some photos earlier today just around, the week following our meeting in February, kind of what the condition of those particular. So those are still concerns.
What were the photos of?
So there are two dumpsters closest to kind of Pineville Ave. One is behind Domino's and the other one is behind the Carter and Coleman building. If you go behind the Carter and Coleman building, which I know that's not what it's called anymore, but that dumpster is always open and animals kind of jump in and out, and if you were to take a walk behind there's just trash all in in the woods there, near that wetland. So, you can say that it'll be taken care of.
But it's not in a separate enclosure with doors
It
and
is
stuff to
an
it.
enclosure the Domino's one is in an enclosure, but it's typically opened. The one behind Carter and Coleman is just a freestanding dumpster. But the photos that I sent today, you'll see it's kind of open and like trash is just spilling out of it. So the trash is concerned. The other thing for me is that I still can't quite get a visual on what it's going to look like. Like I know there's still question about whether there's gonna be a berm or there's not gonna be a berm, but it's sounding like it's not moving in that direction. I don't have any strong feelings about berms, but I do have strong feelings about the trees, which I think everybody knows about now. And I just would like if there's a way to like get a better visual of kind of what that looks like if you're just kind of adding additional vegetation around that area. It's just hard to really envision based on the information that we have available. I guess that's what I have for the moment.
Thank you. So
You have someone on Zoom?
Yep, one minute. So I do, right, I know we got this material late. And I understand, is it from an email from you that, right, because we didn't talk about it in this meeting, right, town, like, engineering didn't have a chance to go through it. So, right, we still have, right, time in a need to sort of go into the details on some of the stuff that was presented. So I just want to put that out there that we have it, but it hasn't been thoroughly reviewed at this point. And I'm bringing that up because I don't know whether it made it onto the website or not. On my email, there's a O&M plan. And I assume that that's going to make it onto the town website at some point, or?
Yeah, so I mean, we don't expect any substantially new comments or concerns. There might be, but again, we haven't gotten them in writing yet. But in terms of the O&M, we had gotten some draft copies, and they're typically a condition prior to some permitting, but we just hadn't really gotten the chance to go through those, so
yes.
we didn't want to kind of have what is not a final document out there. So we appreciate the submittal, we just hadn't gotten the chance to kind of say, yes, this has everything we would expect.
And you're right about the trash. I mean, about our ability, right? We can't necessarily, I think we said this before, right? We can't hold them, what's the right term, right? Like, assuming that they're not gonna be good stewards of the trash because their neighbors
We have to
aren't,
assume
you know.
that they're going to
Yeah.
follow their O&M plan, they're gonna maintain their site, they're gonna maintain the plantings and the pavement and the trash. And I assume the town has, whether it's through the health agent or someone who is checking these things and making sure we're not creating a nuisance.
So there's, the review process both during construction and then post-occupancy in the O&M practices, but then of course public comment when something's going on, and the fact that we now have a condition tied to this property in a site plan potential approval decision with conditions tied to that management that's referenced. It gives us a bit more ability to say, hey, you have to do this or go back to this and revisit it. So first, like a Domino's that showed up one day and we had no idea. But yeah, so.
And I think that's where our concern is when the food comes into place. You know, if you just have paper and cardboard or whatever in the dumpster, that's one thing. Yes, it should be closed. But the possibility that this project, mixed use, could have a food establishment in there, that changes the situation completely. And at 274 Main Street, where we have the dumpster where Domino's is, we've written letters to the Department of Public Health. They come out and they inspect it and say, oh, it was closed. Well, it was closed the day the trash company came to empty the dumpster. And when they put it back down, after putting it upside down, by default, the door closes. That's the only time the entire week, because my in-home office looks right into it. It is open every single day. The rats and the squirrels have a buffet and bring all the food onto our porches. That's the difference between a mixed-use building, having a food establishment, and just an office establishment. And I think it's not necessarily, are the dumpsters going to be managed? And when you have a condo with owner-occupied people, they have a little bit more of owner pride and will close those. When you have an apartment building or a retail mixed use where the people don't have that ownership pride, they don't care if the dumpsters are open or not. And I think that's our concern with the new project. Is it going to be mixed use? Is there going to be food? Are we going to have pizza parties in the front yard as well as the backyard?
And that was one of my questions also with, Jesse showed the dumpster area plan and you had some toters in there. And you, somewhere it said something about composting. Are you looking to separate food waste from the trash?
That's a decision, we haven't made that one yet. That's a little bit farther down the road. I think we're just, it was meant to illustrate the various options that we have.
Because there are ways, and I've been involved with the Reading Composts group, and there are ways to manage that also so that that doesn't create a nuisance by having locking containers.
We've spoken to Black Earth, the ones that work with the town of Reading. We did. So we would like to offer composting. We'd like to be, at the forefront of that process because I don't think enough buildings are doing that. So that's something that we have in mind. We did mention in our initial submittal, we did talk to them and we did scope out services.
And there are ways that you design so that it doesn't get left out.
And we've talked to them about frequency of pickup and how they'll do it and all that.
We have Black Earth compost on Pineville Ave, a few of the neighbors. We had to replace our bin because the cover of the bin got chewed up by the rats trying to get into the compost. We've kept it locked, we put a brick on it, we are very vigilant about not allowing that to happen. But because of the rats that are there at the dumpster, they come over into our yard, we pull into our driveway, and there's the rats going back and forth behind the Black Earth compost. It's not because of the compost bin, we're confident about that, but they're out of control. So I hear that we're going to have control of the trash, but from our experience, it's very difficult to get anyone to control it.
And not to get off topic, but we had a rat problem in my neighborhood. We had a public meeting at the library, selectmen were there, Board of Health were there. It was organized by the residents, but and we had a private exterminator there who controls rats, and I don't know what got done, but the problem got solved.
Well, the neighbors are spending their money on the pest control.
So
But the business and
again,
the owner's building is
especially
If
what
you
we
don't
just
mind,
finished.
if you don't mind, I would like to comment about the Fantasia because I know it keeps coming up.
Can you please come to the podium if you're gonna
Yeah,
speak,
sorry,
because there
I
are people
probably
on
should.
Zoom.
If
And
I'm gonna
can
say a
you
little bit more, I probably
just
should.
remind me of your name and address for the
Yeah,
record?
Severio Fulciniti on behalf of the applicant. So just so that there's a little bit of clarity when it comes to Fantasia and the way that they run their trash there. As you all know, until Domino's came, there was no trash service at that building whatsoever. There was no trash management. Every tenant had to literally take their own bag of trash out to their own dumpster, wherever that might be. So until Domino's became part of that site, there literally was no dumpster. And the agreement that the ownership has there is directly with Domino's, and they're supposed to be the ones managing that trash. So I guess what we're trying to clarify here is that we're going to have a much more, I guess you could say, evolved plan for how to deal with trash, whether it be capacity, pickup, vendors, the pest control. It's not going to be, it'll be a multi-pronged process, not just, hey, here's, this is your problem tenant, go deal with it. And now the Board of Health, unfortunately, is here chasing down Domino's, probably sending them violation notices and everything else to try to get them to act. And unfortunately, that's not what you're going to find here. And I do recognize that from an ownership standpoint, if this was a condominium project versus rental project, perhaps you might argue that there's more vested interest. But I would argue that the level of investment we're making in a project like this, and the number of years that I personally lived in Reading, over 25, and have owned this land, I'm fully vested in this thing. The last thing I want is for you guys to be worried about trash, rodents, or anything else. And I'd be happy, as I have with the Farrells, to give you my personal cell phone number. If anything comes up, I'm going to be here. I'm not going anywhere. So I get it. I truly do. And it is a problem. It's a problem that, is not something that we're gonna replicate. It's not something we're gonna do. We're gonna do it a lot differently. And I would love the feedback from you to tell me, hey, what's working, what's not working, and how we can do it differently. But I promise you, I assure you, it's nothing like what's going on at Fantasia. So, you know, I'm open to any feedback or anything that we can do to do differently than what you're experiencing today. And I do get it. It is a problem. So.
Sorry, just in the purple, can we grab your name as well?
Debbie Riviera, 15 Pineville Ave.
Thank you.
There is someone on Zoom, yes, let's go to them. Zoom meeting.
Hi, thank you. Jason Brown, 47 Pineville Ave. I just wanted to ask a question on the flow of the parking lot. It looks like based on the arrows I saw on some of the design, it looks like the exit point is very close, or the closer access towards Pineville Ave. I would just question whether or not that could be considered to be changed to the opposite flow direction, only because right now there's at least a 3 exit point in a small surface or a small amount of area. People trying to get out of Pineville. We talked about this in the first meeting. The condo development directly across the street from Pineville that's new. The dog sitting place that's directly across from Pineville, and then this one would be a 4th, all in a very small space of area. Whereas if you put it a little bit further down, and I do agree with the chair to limit the fencing, because then you're also creating a blind spot if you do put a fence for the people trying to get out of the other commercial space along with this one. Thank you.
Did you think about circulation the other way? And I guess, right, you still, on that same topic, right, you still need to run this through Mass DOT and get.
That's correct. The thought process between the circulation was, if someone comes in, misses their parking spot, and they have to go back out, that they're not making 2 more lefts to come back in to find a parking space, that they can take a right and come back into the parking lot. And that's the reason the circulation is as it's shown. If there's feedback from the town engineer or Mass DOT, we will happily reverse the direction. But that was the thought process and why it's laid out this way. And while I'm here, and not to change subject, I know people are fairly indifferent about the berm. When we brought that proposal to you, we had heard some feedback about a berm from the board. So we put it in there. I put it in there because it looked like it was going to kind of work. Our landscape architect was on vacation that week, and she is adamantly against this berm. She thinks it's going to kill all the existing trees. She definitely does not want the berm.
Too, right? If you're trying to mound up soil near that tree, you're going to kill the tree.
So if everyone's indifferent, we absolutely do not want the berm if we want those existing trees to live.
Yeah, and Jennifer explicitly wants those trees, so we definitely want to try to keep them.
So, and I guess on the berm, because we do need to talk about that landscaping in the berm in the back. I guess the other question is, how high were you even expecting to be able to get? Is that from the rendering? It looks like it's what, 3 feet?
3 feet.
Yeah. So,
and we don't lose it in any. There's not a lot of material lost in there, so it's not going to reduce the export by any significant portion.
So, can we then go, right? Presuming we don't want to kill those big trees, which, right, I think it's a fair statement. Can we go back and look at that, what that landscaping plan for that area looks like?
We took it off of this plan because we were our landscape architect was adamantly against it. So we provide you a plan with no berm.
Okay.
Keeping the existing trees and landscaped how it's shown.
And and where is that?
I think if you look at the summary of changes letter, I don't know if you can bring that up, Andrew, that he has some graphics there.
There's 2 illustrations that compare the berm versus no berm.
And I believe our landscape architect provided a letter of why she didn't want the berm.
And the site section does not show a berm.
Correct. So that's not on there because we didn't propose it in this set.
For full clarification, I think the 3 existing trees are shown here, and then the plantings as well, the new plantings.
So, yeah, so can we just talk through what's here? Like, is that lawn in the middle there? What's the crosshatched? Is that a pergola? What are we looking at here?
Yep, so as you come up, I'll start at the crosswalk.
Mm-hmm.
This is the older, is there another one? This is the older one. There's no EV charging stations on this one.
If you have it.
I do. She updated it with the EVs.
It's in the plan set. Oh, the rendering, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe the landscape plan.
Yeah, I mean, this is just like a representative image, not, the landscape plan shows, but I feel like the color here
Yeah, there's
is
no color.
a bit more conducive to the conversation, but I'm happy to pull up. Yeah. Try and- These are the two EV spots, here's the crossing.
Yeah. Okay, so as you walk across the crosswalk, and the EV spots are to your left, you'll be met with a concrete, ADA, curb cut access. Just to your left there will be a bike rack and bike storage. There'll be a small walkway to the shed, which the outdoor amenity space materials will be stored, in the winter. And then as you go up and take a right and a left, you'll come to like kind of an outdoor, concrete paved area with a pergola and picnic style seating is shown now, but the seating could change, but it's basically a seating area with no grills. And to the right of that is a turf area for some like yard games or cornhole, stuff like that. And then basically the rest of the area is just landscape beds, with different types of perennials and bushes and evergreens and deciduous trees, surrounding it. And if you go to the next page, it actually calls out all the materials on the amenity area. So you see picnic tables, bollard lights, flush concrete curbs around the landscape beds, the shed, and then the paver area with the pergola.
So, I guess when I look at this, right, first thing that's important, right, to note here, for the neighborhood is, right, this area will be fenced off with a 6-foot fence, right?
Correct. Yeah, there'll be a 6-foot fence around the perimeter, and then at least 10 feet of evergreens, existing trees, bushes between the fence and this area.
Yeah. And then some evergreens, right? And I'm thinking more about like, part of the thing with the berm is that like, right, the idea was you had the berm and then you had, arborvitae on top, and it was, right, that provides not a wall, but
Solid buffer.
Solid buffer. And when I look at this plan, I'm not sure.
Well,
I'm not
again,
sure what
we're
that-
also keeping an existing 80-foot tree in this one that's taken up a lot of room in the middle of that back that, was important to everyone, I think, to keep. And so we're mixing now with deciduous and, evergreens. Certainly, it's not gonna be the same as just a wall of green.
Yeah,
And-
no, and I'm not criticizing, I just want to help sort of like understand I shouldn't say, I'm not advocating one thing or the
So
other.
we
I
could
just
still
want to
do the
understand
wall
what that is.
of evergreens, but it would just be at the expense of some other
Some
trees,
more
deciduous trees,
variety.
yeah.
Yes, yeah, right, and because the other thing that I'm thinking about is that, introducing, and I think this is important, right, introducing that the green space, right, just the lawn area, right, that is good and crucial, very important for the residents here, right, but we need to think that this is going to be a space of activity, right, and so that's, when I look at that, those are the things that I I think about it, I wouldn't, I like, right, for the development's sake, I like the fact that there's some, at least some outdoor space there.
Yes, and we had a more extensive program after we came in, but it was too much, and we pulled it in to try to, mitigate our impacts to the abutters.
The original plan was a wall of evergreens, but when Jennifer mentioned she wanted us to keep those trees, that's why we eliminated and went with this, so that we could create that kind of tiered structure. But we can do that if that's what, you prefer, but that's what
Yeah,
we've
I'm just trying to understand,
Yeah, absolutely.
just
Yeah, absolutely.
what's here, what the plan is, so.
And the key to this is that the Star Road, the paper street behind there, is untouched.
Yeah.
So whatever exists on Star Road as trees and bushes, whatever,
Will be there.
will stay there and be an additional buffer.
Yeah. Other comments or questions based on what we have here?
Ken Reardon, 25 Pineville Avenue. I still, the developer's saying that there's 7 additional parking spots. I still don't think that's enough parking. It meets the zoning requirements, but I'm just seeking assurances from the board that the overflow parking won't affect Pineville. Everybody parks in the driveways. We don't generally park in the street. Pineville is a narrow street. We have the dentist office on the corner. Their overflow parking is on Pineville. So whether that's, resident parking only on the street or something to that effect. I think you kind of already addressed this, but the house at 10 Pineville, that it's going to be kept in good repair. It's not going to deteriorate like other properties in town that have sort of deteriorated with hoping that, we'll just tear it down because now it's unsalvageable. It's a solid house. It's a nice single-family house. Everybody says we don't have enough single-family starter homes. That is a perfect single-family starter home. We just don't want the property to get disrepair, and then the developer says, "Oh, well, now we're going to tear it down," or and now we'll put that cut-through in that we don't want. Just our concerns.
Yep.
I still have concerns about the stormwater. I've already addressed that in the past. All that stormwater currently goes someplace else. It doesn't stay on property, and it doesn't leach into the backyards of the neighborhood where there's already a high water table. Additional box trucks, there's that single spot for the box truck for retail spaces and residents as they move in and out. But so if an additional box truck comes in, where are they gonna park? Tractor trailer truck parking, not addressed. Where are they gonna park? I don't think a tractor trailer truck can make its way through the loop. And how long has the developer owned the travel agency building, the big white farmhouse?
We don't.
Is that not part of the project?
It is, we have it under contract. It's the only parcel we don't physically own at the moment.
Okay. So that's still a private,
Yeah, so
you don't own
whatever
it?
you see there is not my fault.
That was my question. Okay. Okay.
I
All right,
have
fair enough.
control over that one.
So I think, right, the parking issue, we can't ensure that someone's not gonna park on Pineville. What we can do, right, and I'm not so sure that in the big scheme of things that the neighborhood would really want, resident only permit, resident, right? Like that's not, I've done a lot of parking in Reading issues, right? People don't want parking stickers. What we can do is is the site configured in a way that, people wouldn't lead people to park on Pineville? And I think that what we have now, especially with maybe the change in the fencing, even though there's gonna be a fence there, right, it's visually, you see that there's parking over there, and it's, I think, right, it's not generally full over on the Carter Coleman building
Never full.
site, yeah, so,
Particularly at night, I should clarify, because it's an office building,
Yeah.
95, yeah.
so, right, I think the way that I look at this is that, right, if there wasn't a spot there for some day that everyone happened to be home and that's where I would go. I'd go over to Carter Coleman and park there, right? It's an office building, and I guess I wouldn't go and try and loop around to Pinevale where there's a fence and I can't see through. I don't know what's over there. I know I have to walk around. So I mean, that's really sort of the best, right? That's sort of the best you can do on no matter what goes in here, right? No matter what it is, even if it's a single story retail development, right? We would still be dealing with the same sort of thing about like what does the overflow parking do? So.
Again, I'm just trying to avoid something. Me and my wife, family, we went to the Woburn, I forget what they call it now, but the Woburn Mall. And that is awful.
It sounds like, yeah,
So
yes.
we drove around for 15
Yeah, it's
minutes
horrible.
to eat at, I think
Yeah.
we're gonna eat at Surf. And then we couldn't park, so we went someplace else. We had a great dinner at the other place, but
Yeah.
but there's not enough parking.
Right.
Which I'm trying to avoid throughout the town,
Yes.
particularly this neighborhood, affects me. So just
Yeah.
different town, different
Yeah,
project,
yeah,
but
yeah, understood.
But we do have other parking problems in town, but, all we can do is say, does it meet what our requirements are, and our requirements reasonable?
Right.
And I
In a
think
letter I wrote that I'm the one that said I didn't approve of the, that 30% compact car parking spot or allowance. Whatever somebody drives, they drive. They're gonna pull into a spot. So to me, it should just be a standard size. Whether it's a compact or a big car or, 8 foot or 7 foot or 9 foot wide, it's, you get the big.
We have seen that generally that works, like having about that amount. There's enough people that do drive smaller cars that's what they do, so.
Okay.
But, right, like, thanks for those comments, like, they're all, like, right, we will get to we'll further review on stormwater, so.
Okay, thank you.
Can I jump on the parking? At one point, there was a recommendation to inquire if there could be shared parking between Carter and Coleman and this
We've
building.
reached out to them, yeah. We have not gotten any kind of
Okay,
response,
so-
but we have reached out to them and Fantasia and a couple of other properties in the immediate area we've asked, but no one has responded back or willingly offered, let's say.
I will say, right, that's a very hard thing to do, right? Because from the owner, I don't know them, right? But the owner of Carter Coleman, why are they gonna give up that right to their property?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's worth money. It's a development right that's worth probably more than the value of a parking spot. And so, I haven't seen some, unless you're talking like big major developments that we don't have here, right? Like downtown Boston development type of thing, where shared parking works in that context because the money that's being talked about and the volumes are so big, right? Like it's a different world.
Yeah.
In a somewhat suburban context, I haven't seen it work.
Yeah, I mean, it is
and
vacant all
formally,
weekend.
I
and
haven't seen it
evening,
work
so-
formally.
Yeah.
Formally,
Yeah.
right? We see it work informally all the time, right? Everywhere, right? And the property owners like whatever, like they park there, whatever, right? So.
So would there be room to talk more about whether or not like a more natural buffer could be between that fence and the parking area for right where that garage currently is? Like, is that something that can be discussed
existing
further?
garage on
If not
10?
today, eventually, yes.
The existing garage on 10 Pine Hill?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so we're putting, I don't know if we can bring that back up, but we're putting all landscaping, the entire area is gonna be landscaping. So actually, right now, all you have is a couple of small, I think it's evergreens, right? They're separating the 2 yards. It'll actually be completely replaced with a fence, of course, but then landscaping that will provide
So
more
are
sound
those
mitigation.
6 evergreens coming out, or are they staying there?
Yeah,
and
they're
be-
coming out.
Oh, okay,
We'll
cause in
replace
that,
everything, yep. Yep.
will they be replaced
So,
with
I
like
mean, right now, let's say you have about 3 or 4 evergreens here.
6?
We're 6, okay, perfect. So all of this now will be screened and we've added basically different heights.
Is these, like, is there any way that you could like, there's a visual of that? I mean, those have been there for a while, so I assume when you put new,
The ones that are spec'd currently are actually going to have a mature height that's much bigger than the ones you have now. Yeah.
sold.
Yeah. So
I mean,
we're
really,
improving this dramatically for you, absolutely.
I mean,
and
really,
that's why
it's
when I
like,
say we're
it's-
definitely gonna invest a lot of money here because we're gonna move that driveway, we're gonna landscape all of that corner for you. And then on the other side of that fence, you'll notice that there's also some taller trees as well. So it's gonna visually provide a great deal of screening. It should really cut off the view in
yeah, I
terms of
mean,
what
what
you're
I'm
seeing.
really thinking about is just kind of the noise coming, what was
Absolutely.
previously
Yeah.
just a quiet,
Sound
occupied
would have to travel
area.
through 2 fences now.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
like parking, people coming in and out. Like if there's a way to put vegetation between the parking, the fence, that would be, I think, make a
Yeah.
big difference.
Absolutely.
2 more things, I'm gonna keep you here all night. So the easement, if that house was to sell, it sells with the property that is currently being occupied by the parking area for the Main Street development. It's sold as one, that's part of the stipulation for the buyer, that they have to
put up with me. Yeah.
they have to require. Yeah. So is this gonna get approved? What will the next steps be? Like, it's still under this special grant criteria?
Special permit,
Yeah.
yeah. So, the process is, right, I think we're at a point now, right, where we still, we have these plans that are, in my view, much, better developed and coordinated from the concept. But we need town staff to review, and we're gonna dig in a little bit deeper on these. So we'll probably have another meeting, to go through those, comments. And then, right, we need to go through, there's a set of criteria for the special permit, and we need to go through sort of, those criteria and see whether this meets all of those criteria of a special permit. We should probably have done that tonight, but you know what, it's too late. Too late at nighttime. So,
So for me, it's criteria number 3 around noise and,
all right,
that type
yeah.
of thing. So
Right,
I'll be
and
back
so, when we do that, right, typically, right, and I'm not saying this will get approved because we don't know, but typically, when we do that, we go through the criteria and, right, we establish some, if it does get approved, establish some conditions about, yeah, maybe the landscaping wasn't big enough, it's gotta be bigger, or it's gotta, right, like, part of the operations and maintenance plan, you've got to commit to doing this or that or the other thing. So it's in those criteria in the special permit that we then like focus in on what are the other things that we haven't, that's not on the plan here that we need to come to agreement on.
Okay, and this could probably be tabled till next month, but just if the sidewalk was to be replaced, does that mean the trees on the street come down? I guess would be a concern of mine. There's a tree and then a sidewalk.
On Pineville.
On Pineville?
Yes.
All right, I think he, right behind you has a answer, maybe.
We did recognize that was an issue, so we did stop the replacement before the tree.
Okay, did you hear that?
The tree stays?
Tree stays.
Yeah. Anyone, any questions? Anyone online? All right. I think we've exhausted what we're gonna do tonight on this. You guys, did you get, you had a couple of questions, right? You wanted feedback on, I think?
I think we got it.
I think we hit them all?
No
All
berm
right.
court,
all right.
that's where we're at, right?
What's that?
No berm court at
Yeah,
this
yeah,
point.
yeah.
No berm and no fence. Or partial,
Well,
partial.
yeah.
Minimize.
We'll develop an idea for that,
Yeah. And work with your neighbor on fence type, so. All right, so we'll continue to.
All right.
You guys have time to review it?
Yeah, I don't think we expect substantial plan changes, so I mean.
We really shouldn't have too much at this point,
Yeah.
maybe slight refinements.
Yeah, so.
Clean it up a little bit, but
I
yeah.
think our preferred path would try to wrap up some staff comments as soon as possible, if any, but like, I don't think the drainage is changing, I don't think anything substantial is changing, so we can get some more formal comments on those before the hearing, for sure.
Do you anticipate any issues with MassDOT?
We don't, but it's a little early in the process.
Yeah.
That'll be
I just
after.
didn't want us to go through the whole
Yeah.
process. And
This-
MassDOT says, no, you gotta slide everything.
This
20
site
feet.
previously had the 2 curb cuts also, if we recall, way back when. So, and they didn't have a problem with it, right? So
Did approve
I don't
that.
foresee any issues, yeah.
But, and Carlton, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you have to go to MassDOT after you get the local approvals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we asked them for opinions, now they would say.
Yeah.
Oh,
They're
okay.
too busy.
Just one other question, maybe for Andrew and Mary. Do you think for the next hearing, it'll be possible to start going through decision and conditions for this?
Yeah, it's the board's choice, but I would say we're getting there pretty substantially and getting to the level of degree needed to take a look at that. Yeah, we'll have a full draft for sure.
Right, and I would say it sort of depends, right, as long as there's not a major, right, thing in review, so.
Okay,
But
thank you.
I would hope to be at that point. I think
Could we have the draft a little earlier than the Thursday before the meeting, if possible?
You can,
You can.
yep,
It is
we're,
that'd be great.
yep, we're working towards that this week and next, so.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
What's the next date?
April 8th.
Did I hear a motion?
No, you did not
Oh, I
hear a
didn't.
motion yet.
I heard the
Andrew's
start of one.
speaking out of turn. Let's fix that. Motion to continue the special permit for 258 Main Street to April 8th.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Should, right?
All right, we want to talk master plan, is that the,
Approve minutes, what do you wanna do?
Can you chat master plan real quick? It won't take long. I have to uploaded a brief memo that Mary had started and I just got to today. I uploaded it pretty late, but really what we were thinking is that we just kind of wanted to summarize what a master plan is under state law and what it could conceptually include. So this memo just kind of identifies.
excuse
we
me?
just ask you guys?
Excuse me. We still have stuff going on.
Didn't realize you guys are still at work.
You own it or you represent?
So we took this memo just to summarize, right, what are the state law requirements of a master plan broken into pieces where we kind of feel the town is at in each of those pieces and what maybe has some stronger needs than others. But all in all, it's really to summarize that we have substantially a number of pieces broken apart in a master plan. what feels lacking when we look at some of these other master plans or some newer concepts of what a master plan could be from other towns is how you condense it all into like a vision and goal statement. So like the data is there and you could plug that into the master plan and pull it over as necessary and end up with a 200-page document, but maybe you don't need that because all these other plans are 200 pages and pretty technical in and of themselves. It's just bringing it all together again at that visioning area and goal area. So we had summarized this really just in case it comes up at town meeting. The bigger portion, I guess, is that there's some example plans and ones that we feel, I guess, like might be more appropriate in Reading's current context than others. So like our existing master plan is that 200-page, very technical, a lot of data included. So is Rentham's, I think, recent master plan update in 2022 that kind of did that level of detail. But where we feel, right, maybe potentially should the board and others agree if this ever moved forward in the short term, some of those more like Ipswiches or Linns, which we hyperlinked in this memo for review, they're just a bit more visual focused and able for reference.
Now, and I just was glancing at Ipswich, but Somerville is very similar too, where it's kind of, here's our goal and here's the bullets, and it does fit into the state organization, but it's very
aspirational?
No, I wouldn't say that, but it's implementable.
Right.
Like you said, Rentham, you get the 200 pages of, oh yeah, someone says, fix the water system. Build more affordable housing. Whereas Somerville, and I think Ipswich is sort of the same way, but it's a different type of community, is very brief, to the point. This is what our goal is. This is how we're going to achieve it. And
those other
and I think when you do stuff, and I'm looking at Ipswich right now, and it's so visual that it's interesting.
It attracts people, right, and able to kind of be pulled back for reference in other presentations and plans, and so it's a bit more usable, in my opinion.
And I think your memo, I just briefly read it before the meeting, is correct. We've got all these pieces done in big thick plans. Don't just take sections out of these things, because then now you've got it all condensed into a very usable document. I used to tell, when I used to do water master plans, I used to tell my clients, read the first chapter and the last chapter, because the first chapter is the executive summary, all bullet points. The last chapter is implementation plan.
Yeah.
The stuff in between, you only need to look at if you want to get some details.
So, and I did not look at your memo,
No
but
worries. 6 o'clock.
are there pieces that that are crucial to a master plan that do need more development? And I'm thinking the piece that comes up to the top of my mind is, like a transportation.
Yeah, so there's 2 or 3. One is, I guess, just that overall goal and policy statement. The second would be more general in land use patterns, and again, maybe getting back towards housing policies in certain areas or allowances or commercial development areas, and either maintaining them, growing them, whatever that might be. And then the transportation section, where we felt, the 2014 Bed and Pike plan, the parking plans, or from Nelson Nygaard, or even park recommendations, they're all a bit segmented and fragmented. Even the complete streets plan, could probably be worth revisiting and saying what's the priorities, or to be sure. So we feel that the transportation could definitely use a refresh, more specifically the bike and ped and sidewalk infrastructure, but certainly road corridors would end up a part of that to a degree. So, but those were the 3 that stuck out. Most of the open space, or even municipal building energy, or arts and culture, economic development, they're all there already. So those three kind of jumped out as out of the 9 or 10 areas would be a nice refresh for sure. Every master plan to date that I've seen is over $150,000, just so you know. Typically $200,000 in range, and a 2-year process. So whether you refresh completely or even just some of these more kind of holistic visionary-esque programming.
Yeah, and I would say that if you, right, if you had a master plan, well, this is the point, right? If you had a master plan that was finished last year, right, 23, and it was a 2-year process, that means it started in 21, which it didn't, right? Because no one started anything in 21, right? It was actually conceived of in 19 or 20 using consultant rates that were 19 and 20. So I think that if you're looking at master plans that were done with it, recently, and it says it costs 200,000, you've got to escalate that up, whatever, for 4 years. Because 200,000 to me sounds small.
Yeah, it's
knowing
it's on the fringe of what you might expect.
Lockdown.
Interesting. I don't know.
A ghost.
I know we have a large focus on grants nowadays,
Yeah.
rightfully so. But generally, what we've seen is even grants for master plans, you're talking a $30,000 piece and chunk. Not anywhere near a substantial funding to. No worries. To cover the cost of a plan. And even then, right, sometimes what we find those grant opportunities are limited to like community compact or TAP, and those specific grants can also limit you to vendor selection, where like the state will choose your vendor for you given the program, which in this process I don't think would be recommended, just given like the variety or level of need you would want. I mean, it depends on the scope, I guess, that we end up for.
If you're gonna work on it for 2 years, you want to work with the consultant team that you want to work
Yeah,
with.
I think you want that
I think
RFP with the
that's-
criteria that you said and the whole shebang.
We had a consultant that was hard to work with,
Yeah.
and it makes it not fun.
Yeah.
You start off with a lot of enthusiasm, but then it's kind of like, oh, I gotta work on this stupid master plan.
So that was.
But and like I said, this Ipswich run looks really interesting.
Yeah.
And they can be a lot of fun. You have workshops, you
Yep.
have your charrettes and
Yep.
things like that. And these planners know how to organize those and how to get a lot of involvement from different cross sections of the community and.
Right. Yeah, they really can be a visionary effort, and so that's kind of the intent. When you program them that way, it just adds that level of engagement and feedback that you're able to kind of plug in almost as like a roadmap. So that was just kind of high level of where we're at. Should it come up, it's come up a few times over the course of the last year or so. I don't quite know where the political leaders are at with it right now, and how far they want to push it. There's a lot of initiatives in town going on, and this, if pushed forward, would probably take the place of a lot of our capacity and other programs that are being
You're
looked at.
probably, at this point, if you need $250,000, you're probably not gonna do anything till next budget anyway.
Right, exactly.
And so by the time you get the money approved, you're talking about probably end of next summer, 2025, to really get going on something. But I think it's good to be doing what you're doing now, looking at what do we have, how do we pull it all together, and how do we want to do this?
I mean, it's helpful, I think, just having writing that every single section has been worked on since the last master plan, right? So we will bring it up as if nothing exists. mean, like some of the, like the open space plan, you could just insert that plan directly into the master plan if you wanted. Same with like housing production.
And maybe, right, I mean, looking at, 250, right, that's a big chunk of change. But is there grant funding that you could get for the transportation or to update the smaller piece that in doing that with a mindset just like the open space, like do it so that in a way that you can just feed it in.
Yeah, and that's when we look at
So-
grants, we do narrow them and make them specific. Like I think we're interested in submitting to One Stop in June a pedestrian and bike plan update in China. That can be $100,000 in and of itself, especially if you want like the engineering level of like what are your right of way widths and constraints on primary priority corridors. And so, we're interested in submitting that plan. Like, do we get the award? I can't say for 6 months. So, but yeah, agreed.
Of course, there'll be no grants if we don't pass an MBTA community.
Yeah, or they'll steal the money back.
Careful of those MassWorks funds. That
All
was
right.
it.
All right, that was it? Good.
Member availability over the summer under other business. I guess we just wanted to start gauging only because probably similar to this winter, we might expect a few extra hearings, more specific to MBTA communities, and we're gonna program in some public workshopping. Likely, we haven't fully vetted out what those are gonna look like in full detail yet, but the public hearings are expected at the end of summer, mid to end of summer, for any fall town meeting. So just wanted to start gauging that. Also in May, we may have to either reschedule your meeting or, dependent on the agenda, if it's not too heavy, we might not have staff there for that one unless we rescheduled. Just due to out of office time and whatnot. So just a heads up.
You take a
But-
vacation?
Trying to. But
Crazy.
yeah, so I mean, we'll probably start putting together that schedule plan.
So if you have vacations, you should send us the dates,
Yeah.
please.
You mean like, I don't know, April 8th?
That's when you're going, sure, let me know.
Not my choice, but
Just to give a heads up a bit in advance if we can help it. So
Yeah, if we know, I mean, I feel like if we find out like, oh, actually no one is available at all in July or August, then that will obviously very much change the timeline, so.
okay, minutes, and then that's really it.
All right.
If we want to do minutes, you don't have to do.
Did anyone else have comments? I got Tony's.
I read
them. Great job.
You use them for notes for this week.
They're actually really helpful.
They are
to,
helpful, yeah.
to prep. The process of finishing them forces me to be like, oh yeah, I was gonna ask the applicant for that.
So I can vote this week. I didn't have any changes because I didn't look for spelling mistakes or anything.
Also, I should add the Mylars are up front.
Oh, let's go start signing
And
those.
them, before we
I
get out of
actually
here.
thought about that 10 minutes ago.
Any big changes that Tony had?
No.
Yeah, I'm terrible.
Which makes sense, somewhere around page like 5.
I didn't see anything.
It is the 311, yep.
I still got up at 4:30 the last 2 days.
For work?
Dance competitions. I had to get up at 4:30 and get hair and makeup done.
Wow.
My daughter does tap. No, not tap, jazz and ballet.
Oh,
So we had 3.
wow.
And now I'm like, woo. My name is what?
I had no further comments on the minutes.
Which means your son can't keep practicing guitar.
We can.
Oh, you can.
It's
Good.
his right hand,
There you
so
go.
he can still.
So are we,
What is that?
oh,
How many people need to sign?
All of us.
All of you.
That's
So do
because it's
we,
all four of us.
A motion to accept minutes for February 12th, 2024?
I heard a motion, second.
all those in favor?
Thank you.
You can get a sign.
You can go.
I'm still in meeting, you can both go. If we're out of meeting, then you can discuss it and we'd have to sign separately.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any 30-second updates I can give you while people are signing.
We adjourn.
McDonald's decided not to go for the third window,
They did. They
and I
withdrew.
think they will be starting shortly.
I assume they'll start the permitting process shortly. We've made note for some pre-construction meetings and schedules. They haven't followed up just yet, but I would expect, yeah, pretty shortly they'll be.
And Chase is moving forward.
Chase
taking
is
down the
moving
bank.
forward, yep. I don't have much update on 25 Haven and where they're at. I do know that the last we talked to them a number of weeks ago, they aren't moving forward with the second and third stories yet. They were just gonna build out the first floor in the short term, get some people in the use in there, and then should they be able to raise the funds or process or whatever they have to do for the second and third stories, they'll do that then. Should that trigger another site plan if that expires or something, we'll figure that out then. But
Sorry.
25 Haven.
Okay.
Yeah.
I figured, but I just wanted to make sure.
Grandview is ongoing.
18 High Street, all I know is that the beauty supply or the beauty salon is no longer there.
High Street.
Last quarter.
Gotcha. Okay. I don't have much of an update on that one. Haven't heard from them since the extension on what they're doing, where they're at.
Just one question is of our 40R developments that are complete, are they, do you know, like residentially, are they all are they all occupied? But just commercially, right, at least.
Yeah, so I know on Gould Street, they're working through, I think they finally have 2 tenants that are getting in there. I don't quite know when they'll get the full occupancy. And Haven Street, postmarked, that last tenant is aiming for late spring occupancy. It's a restaurant.
Oh, yeah,
steakhouse
saw a
use.
lot of people in there, yeah, was that on Sunday?
Oh, good.
There's a lot of
Finally.
people coming in and out of that space.
Fancy
Yeah,
steakhouse.
they're working a bit more actively than the last restaurant has the time and capacity for, so by early summer I would expect them occupied. Gould Street I kind of expect similar, but I haven't quite found out their full build out plans and needs yet, so that space is empty. They let the tenants prescribe the needs there, and then they have to build it out, so
yeah.
I'm going in there now.
Yeah, it's a
The beauty salon woman.
the beauty salon in the small space and a kids play workout thing, birthday party thing in the larger space.
Is that still happening?
To my knowledge, but that's why I'm like, I again haven't heard from them in weeks now, so it's been a little mum.
All right,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor?
Thank you guys, thank you everybody on Zoom.